The first Life is Strange game is an interactive anthology adventure game which focuses on Max Caulfield, a photography student at Blackwell Academy. We navigate her life at Blackwell Academy as events unfold, which reveal secrets about Arcadia Bay, the town she lives in. There's also another minor thing which involves time travel, but it's not really that important, we can get that later. This is the beginning of a game series which I've grown to love over the last couple of years, and as a result of this I've decided that I will try and rank every single episode of Life is Strange. In part 1 we will be going through each episode of the first game in chronological order. This will be the first of a 4-part series where I review every single episode in the Life is Strange universe. This will then culminate in one last video where I rank every single episode from worst to best from each game. Before we start, I would highly recommend that you play the games before watching this. The first game which I'll be speaking about here is brilliant, and I will obviously be spoiling the entire game from front to back. Though with all that said, this is my retrospective ranking of the first Life is Strange game. Episode 1, Chrysalis.
The lighthouse. I'll be safe if I can make it there. I hope. Please let me make it there.
The opening of the scene really chucks us in the deep end of the middle of a storm. This creates a great sense of mystery immediately due to having no idea of the situation we are in. It is quite scary in a way also, I think. The storm is absolutely huge. One thing I will say though is that in the remastered version which I did for this playthrough, there is a loading screen between the cut of the storm and waking up in the classroom, which completely ruins the dramatic cut that's present in the original game. But if you play that, you'd know it, obviously. We then get put in the middle of the classroom as the protagonist Max, who is here for the teaching of Mark Jefferson, a renowned teacher who is currently lecturing us. I really like the mundane school setting, particularly due to the contrast between it and the massive storm we just saw. During this lecture, we get some obvious foreshadowing with a dark corner line by Jefferson, which might be a bit important later, but we'll see.
Seriously though, I could frame any one of you in a dark corner and capture you in a moment of desperation. And any one of you could do that to me. Isn't that too easy? Too obvious? What if Arbus chose to capture people at the height of their beauty or innocence? Is there anybody here who knows their stuff?
Louis Daguerre was a French painter who created daguerreotypes.
Other things we see are Victoria being portrayed as a cliche high school bully who is set up to oppose us. We also catch a glimpse of Kate in the classroom scene, who is a student who seems quite upset already. This definitely isn't aided by the paper ball that gets thrown at her during the lecture. I also love the scene walking through the hallway to the bathroom. I don't know what song it is playing, but it's great, it really is. The school feels so alive. We see most of the side characters you can speak to throughout the game here. Although they aren't very important to the plot, it's a nice change of pace that you can experience in some of the more optional scenes where you can discover stuff about Arcadia Bay that you might have not previously. This is for the more engaged player though, obviously. Another thing to note, walking through the corridor, is the constant Rachel Amber posters. She is referenced heavily throughout this game, as we know, and I actually believe the poster here is stole the content of a real life poster. I can put that up on the screen now, you can see. I really enjoy the constant reference to her throughout this game, because it makes the mystery of her loom over Arcadia Bay. Especially when we learn her relationships with other characters throughout the game and how important she seems to be, despite us not knowing her. Once we've finished in the corridor, we get to the bathroom scene, which obviously sets into motion the events of the game. I find it funny how this is done through the action of using a sinking game, which sets off just the craziness that we're about to experience. We see a butterfly flying when we're in the bathroom, which is an extremely on-nose reference to the butterfly effect. This photo that we get of the butterfly, though, obviously has a significance to the rest of the plot, which will be important later in one of the endings.
It's cool, Nathan. Don't stress. You're okay, bro. Just count to 3. Don't be scared. You own this school. If I wanted, I could blow it up. You're the boss. So what do you want?
I hope you checked the perimeter, as my step-ass would say. Now, let's talk business.
I got nothing for you.
Wrong. You got hella cash.
That's my family, not me.
Oh, boo-hoo, poor little rich kid. I know you've been pumping drugs and shit to kids around here. I bet your respectable family would help me out if I went to them. Man, I can see the headlines now.
Leave them out of this bitch.
I can tell everybody Nathan Prescott is a punk ass who begs like a little girl and talks to himself.
You don't know who the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing? Come on, put that thing down!
Don't ever tell me what to do. I'm so sick of people trying to control me!
You are going to get in hella more trouble for this than drugs.
Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away from me, psycho! No!
The tension's then heightened when an unknown male walks into the female bathroom, followed by another unknown character.
How can that be?
A gun is pulled out of nowhere suddenly, and this shocked me on my first playthrough.
That poor girl.
The male who walks into the bathroom proceeds to shoot the other character, killing her on the spot.
Back here.
Then we suddenly realise that Max can rewind time as she tries to put her hand out to stop this from happening.
This lecture.
This puts us right back to square one in the classroom. This was really unexpected on the first playthrough for me, and then we get a gameplay element of Max having to rewind time to answer Jefferson's questions accurately that he asked to us in the first timeline before we discovered we could rewind time. These gameplay elements are a big part of why I really like the time travel power, because it's just a fun thing to do throughout the game. It keeps me engaged. The other games may struggle slightly to recapture this essence of Life is Strange, where the power really felt just fun.
Mainly because it gave the subjects clear defined features.
One minor nitpick I have with this scene back in the classroom though is I just don't know if anyone in their right mind would sit in their seat in this scenario once you've known you can rewind time, which would challenge every law ever invented, like physics of everything. So I think Max, should be a bit more urgent here, but I guess not. The scene's still alright, but it's just a minor gripe I have with it.
Holy shit, I can't let this happen.
Once we've done in class, we rush back to the bathroom and stop the shooting from happening by whacking the fire alarm. Once this is done, we leave the bathroom and then start getting cooked by David outside the bathroom, who is questioning us for what we were doing in the bathroom. He's a security officer at Blackwell, and his sole purpose in the first game is to just be on our back. He's also quite a bit of a red herring. We can get to that later though, when his plot develops.
The alarm tripped me out.
Then trip on out of here, missy.
We then run into Principal Wells and are presented with the first choice of the game here, when questioned by him. We can either rat Nathan out, he was the guy in the bathroom who shot the girl before we rewound time, or we can say that nothing happened in the bathroom. This is tough because we currently don't know how dangerous Nathan actually is. You'd assume he would be quite dangerous due to him pulling a gun on a random girl in a school bathroom and killing her in another timeline. Although in the grand scheme of things, these choices really do not matter. They're a false image in this first game, and no matter what you do, you're still going to be in the same pathway. That is maybe the biggest problem with this game. Once we are finished with the principal, we leave the school building, and I love the outdoor campus setting the game introduced us to us here. I will mention my point from earlier again though, that I find it funny how Max casually just converses with people here though. I'm sure like everyone here would be going crazy knowing that they can change time. Every law of the universe would have been broken, but you can just chat with people like Fly a Drone or speak to your teachers.
That's me, alright.
I still like the conversing with them, but it's just quite funny knowing that you can do this after an event as catastrophic to your knowledge of the whole world just happened in the bathroom. But moving on from that point anyway, you can find obvious links between Rachel Amber and Laura in Twin Peaks, so everybody seems to know. That's a TV show I'd really recommend, by the way, and Life is Strange is heavily inspired off that. By speaking to the students on the campus outside the school, we find that they all seem to know something about Rachel, and they all really liked her. This is a similar case with Laura. Everyone is quite positive of her in Twin Peaks, or seems to know something about her.
Whatever happened happens to people who disappear without a trace?
Oh look, it's Max Caulfield.
We then try to enter our dorms, and Victoria serves her character purpose here by blocking us from the
What a
dorms.
lame gimmick.
She is a cliche here, but I feel it works in this type of game, as everybody probably knew somebody remotely similar to her throughout their school years. She's kind of a menace here for blocking us, and to solve this we have a pretty simple puzzle that gets paint on her and gets her out of the way, which leads to the second choice. Now it is tempting to make fun of Victoria here, but I do feel like comforting her is a better choice. Not stooping to her level, in my opinion, is an in-character choice for Max, and I've taken it on my subsequent playthroughs. I didn't in the first one though, and that may be a mistake later in the game, but we'll find out later. This first episode is really puzzle and introducing character-centric rather than plot-focused, which I understand why, as the main aim of this first episode is to introduce the characters, the plot, and also gameplay mechanics. This is useful in this episode because it gives the later episodes more room to really dive into the plot and Arcadia Bay as a whole, which I'm a big fan of. I feel like it only goes up from here. Apart from one episode, but again, we'll get to that later. Later on in the episode, we stumble onto David, who seems to be harassing Kate here for an unknown reason. I don't understand anyone who takes a photo of Kate here. It's clearly the wrong decision. You should intervene and be helpful to her. This first episode does start to show us, though, how mistreated Kate has been, which will become a major issue later on, which is quite an important part of the game.
Excuse us, this is official campus business.
Excuse me, you shouldn't be yelling at students or bullying them.
Hey, nobody is bullying anybody. I'm doing my job.
No, you're not.
You're part of the problem, Missy. I will remember this conversation.
Once we've interacted with Kate, we go to the car park to return a flash drive to Warren. In the car park there is some interesting interactable stuff here, such as Max roasting Chloe's parking unknowingly. Also, Frank's RV, who we don't know yet, has a Breaking Bad license plate, which is funny. And there is a Twin Peaks license plate on Chloe's truck, continuing the links between this game and that show.
What up, Max? How are you?
Here's your flash.
We then speak to Warren, who went for the hug and got denied. He keeps taking L's. We can nearly disclose our wild altering powers to him, but then out of nowhere Nathan shows up. He's a massive prick if you didn't know already.
You're one of the Jefferson's photo groupies?
I'm one of his students.
Me?
Also in this scene is a woman beater, which is quite bad.
Hey, leave him alone.
Nobody tells me what to do. Not my parents, not the principal, or that whore in the bathroom.
As he's about to start fighting us, somehow Chloe shows up out of nowhere and manages to get us out the fight by us jumping into her truck. Warren does one of his only good actions in the game here after this by wiping out Nathan and allowing us to get away with Chloe, whilst Nathan's attention is diverted to Warren. If you paid attention earlier in the episode in Max's dorm, then you may have had an idea already of the relationship between Max and Chloe, but that's not required, and after this point, any player would have a good understanding in the next scene by Max and Chloe's dialogue.
have to call Chloe eventually and find out what she'll say.
In the truck, we learn that Max basically abandoned Chloe and ceased all contact for 5 years despite them being best friends.
Is messed up.
This abandonment is made even worse if you've played Before the Storm, as you know what Chloe went through in the years prior to this.
Oh, and thanks,
These slow scenes of just background character info about Max and Chloe are so good. I love learning more about their relationship. The sunset as well with the backdrop of the forest also make this scene so good to me, and it might be my favourite of this episode. This is a bit of a side note, but I feel like the first episode's strongest part is the character establishment. For me, in my first playthrough, I already had quite a big emotional attachment to the two main characters here, despite only seeing them for a couple hours, in Chloe's case even less. And a lot of that time you didn't even know who she was in the beginning scene. So I really respect Dopenod for managing to develop a strong relationship in such a short playtime that managed to make people really care for these characters. After the truck ride, we end up at Chloe's bedroom, which is a bit too edgy for me personally, but I still love the atmosphere it has, which is the case of pretty much every set in this game. As we explore Chloe's room, we can find constant themes of people abandoning Chloe in one way or another, as we learn the friendship that she had with Rachel Amber, which is vital to the game. There's a continuity error here, though, when Chloe discusses what Rachel's parents did after her disappearance, because I get that the parents weren't perfect, but they definitely would have done more than what Chloe says they would have here. That's the issue of a prequel, though. Obviously, they had no idea they were making a prequel at this point, so some stuff like this may have slipped through the cracks when making the game. They're both still very good games, though.
And Rachel, gone. Can you put on some music now?
Allow me another moment to go off topic here, but there are these contemplative moments throughout the game where you can sit somewhere and Max will give you some dialogue of how she feels with some music in the background. This one in Chloe's garden resonates with me so much for some reason. I didn't find this in my first playthrough, but this hits so hard with the dialogue of Max and Chloe from many years ago. It also works even better if you've played the Before the Storm bonus episode, and also if you know what has happened to Chloe by this point throughout that game.
Except real. That would be majorly cool.
Totally. We'd have cars and boats and planes all over for instant escape. And no adults could tell us what to do.
Count me in. What would you do while I was bodyguarding you?
Maybe take pictures of our adventures. I would love to be a photographer. As if I ever could be.
What are you talking about? Max, you are a photographer. Your pictures could be in a museum. Someday they will. I believe in you.
I think we need to know where David was on January 6th, man. Like, I'm having a look at his gun cabinet, and it doesn't look great for him. He does not need that many guns, but, you know, America and all that. We can explore Chloe's house and discover more clues about David, where he's potentially stalking Kate. He has lots of photos of her and also evidence relating to something that we don't know yet, but we will know later. After retrieving some tools for our broken camera, we return to Chloe's room. She finds our photo of the butterfly from earlier, and I have one minor issue with this. There's no way she could tell we took this photo in the bathroom, considering she didn't even see us in the bathroom. I still like the scene with Chloe in the photo, but it doesn't make sense from a storytelling point of view.
You took this photo, you brat? In the bathroom today. You set off the alarm. That's why Nathan raged after you. It totally makes sense. You hella saved my life.
What's going on in here?
It becomes even more apparent that David is a prick when he storms into Chloe's room and goes on a warpath over a joint. It's necessary to defend Chloe here because she gets slapped otherwise and domestic abuse is bad.
That was my dream.
Also, he says Max is dragging Chloe down despite him consistently having a go at Chloe for everything after playing Before the Storm. I know there's a large group of people who don't like Chloe, but I'm of the opinion that we should just cut her some slack given all she has gone through with her father and also her stepfather.
I'm sick of you losers dragging Chloe down. Missy, you sure do like to pop up and start trouble. Like this afternoon. You don't have anything smart to say now, do you?
Get the hell away from her, man. Stop harassing my friends.
You don't have any friends.
Like you know. You're not even a real cop. You're a fucking security guard.
I was a soldier, Chloe. And Max, if I see you here again, you'll learn all about real trouble.
Once we are finished with David, then we leave the bedroom and head to the lighthouse. On the path to the lighthouse, we see the beginning of the Max and Doe references. There are some great theories for this that I'll mention later on, as they'll become more important with later references of the Doe throughout the game. I know the remastered version rightfully gets cooked, but some of the scenery is so beautiful here on the cliff. Although this remains true in the regular game also.
I've been here in forever. So why do I feel like I was just here?
First episode ends with more tornado premonitions and dialogue between Chloe and Max. Max informs Chloe that David is surveilling her house, and Chloe tells Max that Nathan drugged her once, and she was trying to blackmail in the bathroom, which explains the first scene, which led to her getting shot in the other timeline. At the end of the episode, the sunny day is met with snow, which seems quite weird, and tells us that something is really off. This sets up the reveal for the fact that the town is going to get absolutely obliterated by a storm in 4 days. This is a great end to the episode because it really kicks off the rest of the game and gives us something to not look forward to, but anticipate for the rest of the game. And to not sound like a bad pun here, it puts a big storm cloud over the rest of the game. One minor thing I want to know is I really don't understand why in the remastered version the game cuts to the original version of the game for the ending scenes where you see minor clips of all the characters and what they're up to. Could they not be asked to remaster this? I mean, the remaster cost a lot, so they probably should have. They're charging full price for it, which they did. I didn't pay full price for it. I got it in the pre-order bundle for True Colours, which will be the last part of this series. Final thing I want to note before we get into the ranking of this episode is that the cliff has some really good scenes in it throughout this game. It might be my favourite set in the entire game, which is a tough thing to decide. But the cliff, its consistency throughout the game, really sets it apart for me. The weather in this one's a highlight because the sunset on this cliff is just, it's incredible. It's like thumbnail or wallpaper material for anything.
Chloe, I'm not crazy.
The montage at the end is quite nice. It shows us some characters we haven't met yet and also ones who we know already. The final reveal with Rachel's name at the end is very ominous and sets quite a dark tone, which this game will really like to indulge in at certain points. My thoughts on this episode is that it does a great job at setting up numerous mysteries throughout the game. It also works to set up the characters, with the main focus being on Max and Chloe. But it also makes us wonder about the mystery of Rachel Amber. Other side characters like David, Nathan, Victoria and Kate are also introduced this episode, and we can tell that they will be important players in the plot in future episodes. I think this episode is just pretty solid all round. I don't actually have too much to say to it. It's not incredible by any means, but it just does the job you want it to and not much more. The opening sequence in the bathroom is great, and I love the atmosphere that this episode provides in such a short period of time. I feel like 70% of this time, this game is just a comfort game and incredibly warming, but at the times it isn't, it can feel gut-wrenching, which will be increased in the later episodes. The only time it delves into that in this episode is when you see a random girl get shot 15 minutes into it. This episode can fit quite comfortably in the B tier for me for reasons stated above. It's just a solid intro episode, probably an 8 out of 10 if I had to numerically rate it. Episode 2, Out of Time. The second episode starts off slowly with a morning routine. We can explore the dorms again. We can also tell that Kate is quite upset and rightfully so. This is a big theme of the episode.
Hey, Kate.
There's a video of Kate doing some sus stuff at a party being used against her. But that's not the whole story. We learn later on that there may have been some dodgy occurrences happening at this party that made Kate act in certain ways that she wouldn't normally. Victoria and her squad of suck-ups leave a link to the video of Kate in the bathroom which we can erase. And I don't know why you wouldn't do that. It's just, you know, common decency. Also in the dorms, you can enter Kate's room. Her thoughts are all over and clear to see in the room. There's quite a lot of dark imagery, some quite disturbing drawings as well. The information in this room is important, and there's stuff here that you need to know for the end of the episode, which I really like. This is the one part of this game that, I don't know if it's a choice, but something you do actually matters later on. This isn't common throughout the rest of the game, though, or many of the games at all, of the whole series, not just this one. But whilst we're in Kate's room, we speak to her and understand that she was a victim of Nathan, according to her. Nathan drugged her at this party, and it led her to be quite promiscuous with other people, but Kate has no memory of this, and all she remembers is just waking up outside of her dorm. Kate then asks what she should do with this information. Should she go to the police or not? Now, in this situation, I believe it's quite smart to appease her, given her current situation, how fragile she seems because of the trauma she's been through. Although this decision doesn't matter as much as knowing the information in her room. I believe the information you know in this room is her favourite Bible verse and her relationship with her sisters and also father, I believe. I will put up, obviously, what is correct in the video, though. You can see now. Once we finish speaking to Kate at the start of the episode, we go to outside to visit the diner to meet Chloe. But before we get there, we are stopped by Warren, who offers us to go to a drive-in. I really don't want to do this, but it doesn't really matter because this decision holds no relevance because a certain event happens in a few days that makes going to a drive-in the last of everyone's concerns. Anyways, once we finish with Warren, who I do not care for, we get on the bus and go to the diner to meet Chloe. And the song on this bus absolutely bangs. I forget the name of it, but I'll put it up here now. The bus ride scene is just very chill and allows us to soak in the atmosphere of Arcadia Bay even further. These next episodes will be really self-indulgent because the first episode did such a good job of setting up the characters and whatnot and the plot. These episodes have some more time to breathe and really just let us enjoy Arcadia Bay. This is the best part of the game. Arcadia Bay is so unforgettable. I genuinely feel like I could play a game just being able to free roam around the individual settings in this game. One last thing I'll note about the bus ride is I love the subtle nods and the slight glimpses you catch of the lighthouse whilst on the bus. It is a constant reminder of what is to come on Friday. Another thing to note around Arcadia Bay are the small conversations with town people you can have in certain settings. This really helps give the town more life and it just feels lived in. The world building for this game is brilliant. You can have conversations with people and they'll discuss their day-to-day lives. It helps to make the world feel really lived in and accurate. Not that I would know, but it does feel like a pretty accurate representation of small-town America, particularly in the 21st century when the residents are discussing how their jobs have been sort of made obsolete by big corporations sort of destroying the area. The big corporation in this town are the Prescotts, whom Nathan is a member of. Once we've taken in the scenery of Arcadia Bay, we enter the diner and we can see a Twin Peaks reference in the bathroom of the diner. Developers clearly knew what they were doing. We're introduced to Joyce in the diner, who is Chloe's mother. She seems a lot more relaxed than David. She says that David cares, but David shows a really odd way of expressing this care, especially when he slaps his stepdaughter. I mean, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't show my caring by committing domestic abuse, but I guess that's David for you. Getting a close look at Joyce and David genuinely make Chloe feel like the protagonist in this game. This is due to the fact we learn so much more about her backstory when compared to Max. Like, we know about Max's parents, but it's only through a few optional dialogue lines you can take at certain points. I do really like this approach from Don't or Do, because often when playing as a protagonist, we can go against the personality of that character in our playthroughs by treating ourselves as the protagonist. By making Chloe a non-playable character in this game, it lets her personality shine through the entire game and provides no conflicting choices in her character arc. We can see this by playing as Max, who is portrayed as shy, but we can go around campus and question every single student on a wide array of issues. This would not be in character for Max, because she is, again, pretty shy. She wouldn't be speaking to the whole campus in like a 5-minute spell. Whereas Chloe's character is her character, and that stays the same the whole game. Well, it doesn't stay the same, obviously. She has a character arc, but Chloe is Chloe. This sounds really stupid saying it out loud, but just let it be known that I like the fact that we learn more of the story about the non-playable character. After a certain point, though, Chloe shows up to the diner as planned by the text we received from her this morning. This gameplay sequence with the pockets is quite fun, and it's a smart way of making use of Max's powers. I wish there were more scenarios similar to this throughout the game, because we don't really use our power to memorize anything else. I mean, there's some locker codes later on, but that's just actual pure memory. You're not using Max's powers to do that. Once we've demonstrated our powers to Chloe through guessing the stuff in her pockets, we then go to leave the diner. But for some reason, when Kate calls us at this point, Chloe decides to try and make us not pick up the call.
Once in 5 years, and now you're all over some biatch you see every day at school. I see how you roll. So go ahead, chat up Kate Marsh from Blackwell. I've got other people to hang out with, too.
Hey, Kate. What's up?
Please, don't let your best friend get in the way.
You okay? I promise, Kate. I won't forget. I swear. Just do your homework and don't stress. I really don't think we should go into this right now. I'll call you later, okay?
Thanks, Max. If you'd rather chill with Kate, please, go ahead.
You are ridiculous. I'm chilling with you, okay?
For now, let's rock.
I really don't get this at all. This scene is so stupid and it's so out of character for Chloe. Like, I get Chloe isn't exactly the nicest person ever, but I refuse to believe that she would be this upset about you picking up one phone call. Like, she acts like you've personally insulted her whole lineage because you won't leave the diner like 30 seconds earlier. I really can't get over how stupid this is, and I don't understand why this is in the game. Like, it genuinely makes no sense. I can't think of one logical reason that they'd put this in, apart from the fact they were struggling to think of another choice, so they had to contrive some conflict out of nowhere. Once that stupid choice is over and done with, we leave the diner, and we spot somebody spying on us. We have no idea who this is yet, but if you paid attention, you'd have seen this RV throughout the game, and you see a dog and a man looking at our truck. This will definitely not be important later, and he definitely won't threaten us. Chloe then takes us to the junkyard, and this is just perfect. I love the junkyard so much.
That depends on you.
I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but the atmosphere is just on point. The ambience of the bird noises, just everything. The junk, I mean it's a junkyard, so obviously there's junk. Just everything. The train tracks, you get the trains passing by, it's brilliant. Especially if you've played Before the Storm, because we know that Chloe has liked this place for a while. One minor thing I want to note here is Chloe's just casually drinking at like 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, you know, DJ life and that. But I can respect it though. What I cannot respect though is this next sequence where you have to find 5 bottles. Who put this in, genuinely? You had the scene with Chloe before where she gets annoyed at you answering the phone, and now we do this finding 5 bottles task, which was really stupid because the first time I really couldn't find the bottles. So you just wander around aimlessly looking for 5 bottles. This doesn't advance the plot in any way. All you do is shoot something. And the most annoying thing about this is Chloe doesn't even shoot 5 bottles. She shoots 2 and gets fed up. Like, what was the point of me finding 5 bottles if you're just going to shoot 2 and then say, you know what, no, we're going to shoot something else now? Why? This slave labour Chloe gets Max to do is just pointless. Although we do spot another doe in the junkyard and Max can take a photo of it. When we get to shooting the bottles, there's quite a funny sequence where Chloe can end up shooting herself. And Max's reaction here is laughably stupid. Like, Chloe shoots herself and Max just acts like nothing really major happened. I mean, obviously she can rewind time, but you'd think she'd be a bit more flustered than what she actually does.
Uber cool. I cannot believe this is for reals. My best friend is a superhero. Now it's your turn to bust a cap.
I don't know.
Max, your nose. Damn.
I don't feel so super.
Max!
After we've done the shooting with Chloe, we then go to a truck and we lie down for a bit after Max gets tornado visions again. Her nose starts bleeding and she passes out, I believe. And after that, we're just chilling in the junkyard, you know, as you do, and then the guy spying on us at the diner suddenly appears. His name is Frank. He's demanding that Chloe give money back that she owes to him.
In fact, you need it so bad, you owe me a shitload, don't you, Chloe? Huh?
We then learn that Frank has Rachel's bracelet, which Chloe is aware of. This presents Frank as a potential suspect in her disappearance. He then threatens to stab
You better
Chloe.
step back before you regret it, girl. I mean it. You want me to cut you, bitch?
Please. Please step back.
You're kidding. Put that down.
We didn't get a chance to attempt to shoot him or not. This choice doesn't matter again. But I would prefer shooting him though, because he's in a really dodgy relationship with Rachel due to the age gap between them. I'm also pretty sure that Rachel would have to be a minor at some point, so that's not very good. He then decides to threaten teenage girls with a knife. What a nice guy. Also a potential continuity error here, with Chloe and Rachel apparently borrowing money from Frank to try and escape. But, I don't know, maybe they tried to do it after Before the Storm, but Chloe says that they tried to escape. Again, that's an important part of Before the Storm, but they didn't take money off Frank to do that. Anyways, I digress. I really need to delve into the fact that the relationship between Rachel and Frank is this game's biggest miss. I absolutely hate the fact that the game almost tries to normalise it. Frank should be on a register and in jail, not given some vague redemption arc in a couple episodes' time. And I promise you this will not be the first time I rant about that in this video. It is disgusting.
Do you think that Rachel and I would have been friends?
You're not that different. She has a great eye for images and for art. Plus, she's a smartass like you. We would all be hella best friends forever.
I know she must be as cool as you are. I have no doubt we'll meet soon.
After discussing Frank on the train tracks, Max and Chloe then move on to discuss about Rachel, and Max makes a comment about meeting Rachel one day, hopefully. I mean, you technically will, Max, you just won't like how it happens. Then once this discussion has happened, we get another tornado flashback, or, I guess, premonition of what's to come. Conveniently, straight after this, it then appears that Chloe is stuck in the train tracks and is about to get steamrolled by a train. My question I have about this is why does Chloe just not take her shoe off? Like, would that not work? Also, why don't we just rewind time to before she got stuck in the train tracks and Max just tells Chloe, hey Chloe, don't put your foot in the train track. Anyways, it's not important. We save Chloe by doing a puzzle, and then we leave with our dignity intact, apart from the fact that we watched our friend die 50 times. One thing I like about this episode and the game as a whole is it really reinforces the theme of saving Chloe from death. Obviously, we start off in the bathroom, which sets off the events of the game. Then, just in this episode, you have to rewind when she shoots herself accidentally in the junkyard, and now for the train. This won't be the last time this happens either. You save her a lot more times in this game. She even mentions it in the last episode.
Mind power has to be connected to that snow yesterday. That might explain your tornado vision.
Explain what? Snow equals a ginormous twister that takes out Arcadia Bay? You're high.
Wake up, Max. You saved my life twice now. You altered the course of my destiny, yours, and whoever. Do you know about chaos theory?
Chloe then drops us off at Blackwell and discusses our powers linked with the weather and also the weather causing the storm. She references chaos theory of Max, which is basically the theory that within random events there are underlying patterns, which definitely applies to our situation. Chloe then states that we should just part of our power instead, and honestly, I respect somebody for trying to use the power in an interesting way at least, instead of Max just standing around and speaking to people potentially.
So let's party with your power, Rockstar.
Once we've entered the school, we go to our classroom and we find Jefferson being a bit of a prick towards Kate here. We can see small signs of what happens to Kate here. She is pretty upset. After this, we speak to Jefferson, and I find it strange how every event spreads like wildfire in this school. Here I'm referencing the knowledge Jefferson has of Max stopping David from harassing Kate in the last episode. I'm not sure how Jefferson would know about this, but maybe his methods of knowing things at Blackwell, which explains what he does later in the game. Once you've spoke to Jefferson, you can eavesdrop on his phone call, and I just find it funny how much he sounds like Walter White here in the first couple of seasons of Breaking Bad trying to hide what he's doing. Also, I wonder who Jefferson's on the phone with here, because it can't be Nathan, because he's in the classroom. Maybe Nathan's dad, but apart from that, I actually wouldn't know who he'd speak to here. It'd be quite interesting if anyone had any ideas of that, because I don't.
I know.
Think she can hear us.
As we enter the classroom, we are met by Nathan and Victoria presenting themselves as the cliches they are again by stopping us from taking our seats. This is weird in my playthrough because I've been pretty nice to them so far, but they still do this regardless, which only emphasises the fact that choices do not matter. Another thing you can note in the classroom outside is David taking photos of Kate, which is pretty suspicious of him. I don't know if he has permission to be taking those photos. I'd assume not of how shady he is.
Technically C in my...
Some crazy shit is going down at the girl's door.
Our lesson then starts, and instantly some random kid runs in the classroom and says some crazy stuff is happening at the dorms. Class then casually just walks out 2 minutes into a lesson. Granted, a pretty big event is currently happening outside, so they're kind of justified in their decision. We then go outside the dormitories, where we see Kate preparing to jump off the roof. I would be lying if I said we all didn't see this one coming, but this moment still manages to hit pretty hard when you see her up there. Somehow we manage to slow down time to get to Kate. I can see why people would see this as some plot contrivance, that this conveniently happens now, and is the only time we can freeze time throughout the game. Same can also be said for Max conveniently losing her power at this moment, which is another case of this being the only time this happens throughout the whole game. This is stupid, but I will give praise to this in how it uses the info from Kate's room to prevent her from jumping. It really rewards those players who pay attention. I will say that regardless of those issues I have with this scene, the Kate on the roof still managed to engage me, and I find it deeply immersing, especially in my first playthrough where I managed to save Kate. I do enjoy this quite a bit, and I felt quite an emotional weight seeing Kate potentially jumping, and I felt quite rewarded when she didn't, and I learned that she'd leap. This is the one choice in this game where I can say, you know what, this actually makes a difference. I wish it happened more, but it doesn't, and I still love the game for it, but it would be much better if there were some more different choices like this one.
I'm sorry. Sorry. What are you talking about? You saved me from talking in class.
I really respect the game for its portrayal of Kate and how they don't overdo it with some screaming acting to make it seem like she's in anguish and deeply sad. She's obviously in pain, but has basically been suffering in silence due to a lack of support from the school, but also due to the repression from certain parts of her family who may look down on her for these feelings. But it just makes Kate a really compelling character, and she's one of the only purely good people throughout this game with no flaws. Don't get me wrong, I love a flawed character, but it is really a gut punch when you see a character as pure as Kate suffering like this, which again just only emphasises the happiness I had when I saved her in my playthrough, and she was fine. I also quite like the scene of her later in the game, which is a bit fan-servicey, but it's not important now, we can speak about that later. Once the fiasco with Kate is finished, we get a scene in the principal's office with Jefferson, Nathan, and the principal. Oh, and David, obviously. Nearly forgot him. Don't forget Big David, what a guy. I lied, he's not, he's pretty abusive. But this scene, regardless, is quite interesting, despite the fact it doesn't mean much later in the game, and I really wish this one meant something, because this could have been a killer scene if it did. It's still good, I still like it, you've got some big heavyweight characters in this room, but it just, you know, you get a few dialogue lines that change later based on what you do here, but there's no meaningful impact. I feel this is a good time to bring up a point though with the choices, and admittedly whilst they don't mean much, I will say the decision element still works in the first playthrough because you play the game as thinking that it does mean something, which impacts your playthrough. I know when I first played this I thought it was crucial, and we could blame someone it really impact their status in the game. Obviously it didn't, but I didn't know that on my first playthrough. I still enjoyed it and treated it like it did. It's just in subsequent playthroughs that the lack of choice importance really takes its toll on the game. Regardless of that, I still like this scene, and I believe I blamed Nathan on first playthrough just because he is the most obvious bad guy right now. This certainly isn't the worst choice, there's obviously someone in this room that's done a lot more worse than Nathan, but I'm still glad of my blaming Nathan decision because he's probably just as bad, maybe a little bit better than the other main guy in this room, who we're quite familiar with already.
What the hell is
Once we finish this scene in the principal's office, we then end the episode. We get a similar ending to the last episode with a feeling of suspense, and it makes us question the situation we're in more, especially with the really hard-hitting scene of Kate. There's also some more weird weather with an eclipse which was not expected by anyone. We get another ending montage, and I really like these. Helps us to catch up with the characters and see what they're currently up to. In a continuation of last episode's ending, we see Kate's file on the desk in this mysterious room next to a Rachel file, which is what we saw last episode. My thoughts on this episode are positive. I do like this episode. The Kate stuff is very engaging, and the scenes with Chloe and Max are great, and some of the most iconic shots of this game, especially at the junkyard. I think all Life is Strange fans have seen the train track picture of them a million times at this point now. This episode really sets into motion the main plot of the game in trying to discover what happened to Rachel Amber. This episode ties Kate into the mystery of her because they are pretty similar cases from what we know, and you can quite easily tie them together due to the similarities between them, of them students being at Blackwell. I believe this episode fits nicely into the A tier. Episode 1 laid the groundwork for this episode to really develop further. We naturally feel a lot more comfortable in Arcadia Bay, also due to spending the time to set the stage in episode 1. This really allows it to delve further into Arcadia Bay with the diner scenes and the junkyard scenes. We dive into more of the characters' relations with each other, with Chloe mainly, with Chloe's mother, and also Frank. Now, Before the Storm also does a good job of this, but it is nice hearing it from Max's perspective, who hasn't seen Chloe in half a decade at this point. it also is funny to remember that this is only the second day they've been back together, and Max and Chloe seem like they've been friends for ages, which obviously they have, but it's quite funny how quickly their relationship rekindles, and I love it for that. Now, with episode 2 done, we can move to episode 3, and this is where this game really kicks into the highest gear. We are about to discuss peak fiction, I will warn you. Episode 3, Chaos Theory.
Kate!
We start off this third episode by being awoken pretty late at night by Chloe's text to meet her somewhere on campus. Once you leave your room, you can see people wishing Kate well in the hallways after her suicide attempt. These are the same people who caused the situation, by the way, which is quite ironic. I hope some of them feel sorry for it, mainly Victoria. One thing to note in the Storm situation, and the game as a whole, is I like the extra things you can do in the game. At the start of this episode, you can search through Victoria's room. This is done by a conversation with a side character. I'm sure the vast majority of people missed this in their first playthroughs. I definitely did. These interactions make the campus feel actually lived in, and they take place throughout the game in any location, such as outside a diner, or any other place. As we reach the outside of the school, we are jump scared by Chloe. This then leads to a conversation where the main focus is with Chloe's and Max's conversation on finding clues about Kate and Rachel and the links between them. Another thing we can know outside the school is Victoria trying to seduce Mr. Jefferson, which is actually really disgusting if you know the full context of the game and what happens later on.
I won't be going to San Francisco, remember?
Once we're inside the school, our aim is to find evidence relating to Kate and Rachel and other students in the principal's office. Sadly, we can't find a key to get in there, so it then revolves on us doing a puzzle sequence to commit terrorism. I'm not a science person here, but I think the instructions for this bomb we build is actually accurate. Please don't do this. This is not an excuse to commit terrorism. Anyways, the device we make lets us into the principal's office where we try to find evidence of Nathan and other students. I would thank Warren for helping us with the terrorism, but no, he's not getting any praise from me. Apart from one thing. We'll see that later though. Inside the principal's office, there's one thing I'd like to know, and I don't know if this is an American thing, but I refuse to believe a school would have this much info on each student in its files. Like, obviously contact information and stuff like that is obviously standard, but they have a few hundred words written on each student here. Maybe I'm completely unaware of the record schools keep though, but that would be a lot of words on every student that attends Blackwell. I don't know how many, but it seems quite a lot when you walk through the corridors. One major thing that also happens in the principal's office is we get our first reference of the darkroom here from a Nathan drawing. I'm sure this image won't reference some horrific events which we will uncover later in the game. I really hope that doesn't happen, because that would be quite bad.
What does this even mean? Nathan is truly psychotic. I know he has something to do with Rachel missing. Whoa, listen to this.
Chloe is spot on in her analysis here of Nathan having something to do with Rachel after seeing this image. Also, though, David is presented as a red herring in these images, as he is continued to be linked to Nathan, and whilst he is interested in Nathan from an investigative point of view, turns out he actually wasn't the evil guy made out to be. But he's presented as that now as the player, so I wouldn't blame anyone for believing that until later on in the game. David is your just typical bog standard red herring character, which is fun. I like him. He's one of the best written characters in this game, which I'll get more in depth with later. So it's nice to have a bit of a distraction until the main guy shows himself later, who we have no clue of right now. The scene in the principal's office continues, and we get a choice of the episode where we can either steal from the disabled or keep it for yourself. If you take the money on the first playthrough, you may be a horrible person. I only did it because I know what happens. I can understand why some people would be confused why Chloe gets angry even not stealing, though. It does kind of seem silly, like she makes you seem out to be bad because you don't want to steal from the disabled. I get she has a debts to, Frank, who's some scary drug dealer in there, but, you got to have some heart and not steal from the disabled. You could surely find a different way to get the money. Just go and rob someone or something, I don't know. Rob someone else that's not disabled. I think this whole disabled conundrum is just some actually quite decent foreshadowing for what happens at the end of this episode. Which for some reason I only just realised when writing this script. I really should have realised sooner because it is quite on the nose. Once the shenanigans in the school have finished, Chloe decides to break into the pool, which is on campus as well. This really typifies the game's feeling as a comfort game, because the scene of Max and Chloe in the pool is just so... It's so calming despite the fact it shouldn't be, because we're breaking into a place in the middle of the night. Like, these are the scenes where just sit back, chill, and the game really immerses you in it. But then, if you look at other episodes like this one, there'll be moments where it just cuts back and tries to rip your soul out. We then get more reminiscing with Chloe about Rachel and how much she misses her. Rachel genuinely feels like a main character despite not being physically present in this game. Most of the plot points in this game are driven by her relationships with other characters, such as Frank or Chloe, to name the few obvious ones. Obviously Kate is an exception to this, but her relevance to the plot going forward is reduced heavily after the last episode, and she's just sort of another case to add on top of the Rachel situation. As the next two episodes are mainly delving on finding what happened to Rachel, whereas with Kate, we already know what happened to her because we experienced it firsthand. Chloe then discusses the link between Max's power and saving Chloe, which is a constant theme of this game, and I discussed that last episode. But it's nice for Chloe to keep reinforcing these themes of the game in her own dialogue.
Dude, I'm not her groupie, okay?
The scene really helps to solidify the redevelopment of Max and Chloe's relationship in an extremely short period of time. Obviously they know each other for ages, but the relationship can develop even further beyond this, based on what choices you make later. I am one of those who took it further. I feel like that is pretty integral to this game in my opinion, but play the game your own way. That's why it's a multiple choice game, even though they don't really matter, but I sound like a broken record on that. The thing to take from this though is that Chloe and Max are pretty inseparable, and their relationship is what brings this game to life. It's the reason I love it so much. I could do with even worse writing. I mean, the writing's still good in this game, but it could be bad. But these two characters just elevate this game to a level that I can't really describe. It just... I don't know why I like it so much, I just do. And this is some pretty stupid base of analysis that sounds like pointless. Like, oh, how can you like a game if you just like it? But I just do. I just really enjoy Max and Chloe being together, and it's why I think it's so smart of the game to mainly be focused on them two. Other characters get involved slightly, but they don't get nearly as much screen time as these two. And the game just gives Max and Chloe's relationship room to breathe in, and is the main focus of the game despite our investigation of Rachel being so thorough. I believe that Rachel's relationship with Chloe inevitably brings her together with Max out and need to find the truth of what happened to her. Once we finish swimming about the pool, David appears out of nowhere and starts hunting us in the pool because he's obviously heard that somebody's broken into the pool in the middle of the night, which isn't pretty cool. We then get a minor stealth sequence, which is fine. This stealth I can handle. There's one later which I absolutely despise, but again, getting ahead of myself, we'll speak about that later. The next day then starts. We escape back to Chloe's room and we stay the night there. The next day starts off with a Tarantino reference, if you know what I mean. Chloe then continues to reference the hope of a new life away from Arcadia Bay whilst in bed with Max, something that nearly happened before the storm, but other things got in the way. That's again, getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that in the next video, which I don't know when will come out, hopefully soon after this one. We then get a choice where Chloe asks us to kiss her, and I believe it's mandatory to do this. Especially when the alternative is Warren for Max, which I just hate the thought of. I said it before, but these two should be together, in my honest opinion. Minor downmarks for the game here after this though, because then we get one of the worst dialogue lines in the game of Max. I'm just going to play it, I can't even bring myself to say it, although you get quite a funny response from Chloe though. This line is almost so bad it's good, and let me tell you, there's stern competition for the worst line in this game. I really can't be able to bring them all though, because it's just going to resurface trauma when I had to hear them for the third time. Still love the game, and I get this is how people probably spoke back then. It's just, in the year 2024, it's aged a bit poorly. But people spoke like that. Particularly on the West Coast, I'm assuming. I'm not from there, but it seems real enough.
Max, a couple tats, some piercings, and we'll make a thrasher out of you yet.
Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra?
Maybe not. Go on down and say hi to Joyce. Free breakfast.
I mentioned these sitting down breaks in the first episode, but in these episodes particularly, they are a nice breather due to the action-packed nature of the next two episodes. I can see why some would dislike them though and just see it as a really simple hipster distraction, which is fair enough. I like the reflective moments enough though, and they are completely optional, so if you're not a fan of them, you can just skip them, and that's it.
I always got scared and would jump off before I flew off. After all these years...
During the discussion with Joyce, we learned further that the game loves dumping trauma on Chloe. Pretty much everything in her life has gone wrong for her. And every time it looks like something might get better, something awful happens, like with Rachel. And like a potential end in episode 5. But, it's not important right now. Whilst exploring in Chloe's house, we get confirmation that Frank is quite sus from David's computer. David's comments on his computer about Jefferson are also really funny, and I need to remind myself to put them on the screen here. We also get a lot of info on David's computer about what certain characters have got up to in recent times. Clearly David has a vested interest in all the mysteries around Blackwell, and this sets his character up quite well, and you can see why he is presented as a bad character, but if you look close enough, if you pay enough attention, you'll realise he's actually got the right idea here. He's just going about it in completely the wrong way. Like, I get David is right to be suspicious in the end, but he's still a complete douche. Although, again, this is him just being a very well-written character. He goes about the investigation completely the wrong way. If you side with him here in this argument with Chloe, you're insane. I don't see one good reason to do that. But I still like David, due to his conflicting nature of his own actions. We're not sure if he's good or bad, and I'm not even sure if he knows if he's good or bad or not. He is a morally grey character, which really serves this game well. I think it's important that not every character is completely good or completely bad in this game, and we're not sure of some characters. There's more later on though. Even Chloe slightly fits this category, not as much as David, but you could argue that she has some light sides and she has some dark sides. Despite my bigging up of him though, David gets kicked out as a result of us revealing his surveillance of Blackwell students and of the surveillance of Joyce's house. He can still hold that though, he still deserves to get kicked out, but David, me in actual real life, I'm still backing you, mate, but my Max, nah, you're done. She hates you. I'm sorry. David then blames Max for splitting apart the family, but Max did nothing to you, David, that you didn't ask for, basically. You caused all this by storming into Chloe's room, hitting her, and then just going on a warpath when there was no real reason, and then acting like you properly care. And maybe I don't doubt that you do care, but again, it's done in completely the wrong way. After the argument with David, we finally leave Chloe's house where the investigation continues onto Frank's RV, which is located in the car park of the diner. We're then tasked with trying to get the keys off him by using some rewind magic. It's also quite an enjoyable scene here where you have to speak to different people in the diner and try and use information from each character, which eventually progresses to you being able to bait Frank to get his keys out. And then you take them, but you rewind time so he doesn't know he's giving you his keys, but you still have them. There's also an absolutely legendary bean scene here, which is very hilarious.
You eat like a pig. Try the floor.
I was eating those beans. Are you fucking insane? I was eating those beans! Ugh. Ugh.
Like, with Max's power, you could genuinely be the biggest menace of all time with this power. Like, just go up to random people you've never interacted with in your life and do, like, the most obnoxious thing you can think of. Then you rewind a second later and there's no consequences. We finally see that in this game here with Frank, and I understand why they didn't put more of this in, because it'd be a bit of a distraction, but it is bloody hilarious seeing it. From Frank, we learn more backstory about Rachel and their relationship, which again, I've said it, but it's disgusting and I don't want to know more. Why is the game trying to normalise this? Then we have the weirdest decision once we have Frank's keys. We go to the RV with Chloe, and then once we open the door, obviously his dog tries to rush us. We have a treat to bait it. Then you have a choice to either send the dog into traffic or not. Like, with every other decision in this game, you can sort of vaguely understand why somebody would take a certain path, but with this one, like, the decision is literally kill a dog or don't. Why would you kill a dog? Like, animal cruelty, I know this is not the most obvious opinion ever, but why animal cruelty is bad? I don't get why I would do that. You'd be some sadistic, sick, twisted guy to think, you know what, I'm going to kill the dog. I'm rambling a bit too much here, aren't I? But I am very annoyed that even like 1% of people took this decision. Maybe they just did it for a joke, but still, it saddens me to know that 1% of these virtual dogs died.
Frank has issues, but he's not
Anyway,
crazy.
I've got a bit sidetracked. We'll get back to the RV, where the main thing we discover in here is Frank and Rachel's relationship and the depth of it, which kind of disgusts Chloe, but not for the right reasons. She just feels betrayed by her friend, but like, and she could have easily been groomed by Frank. Do you not understand the power dynamics in relationships of this age gap? Like, come on, somebody must see this. It's not just me. I know, obviously, this is a big thing when people have played the game, but in the Life is Strange, like, Frank's 32 years old. Rachel's like half that. Come on. But yeah, I don't have the energy to discuss the scene that much. I just really don't like this relationship, and it is quite shameful how this game seems to make it just seem like the main issue of it is that Rachel wasn't honest. It's not Rachel's fault she got groomed by a drug dealer. Once we're done with discussing that in the RV, we then go in the car towards Blackwell, and Chloe is kind of a prick in this scene, but I can sort of understand why, given her life circumstances, but it is to the point where it is really obnoxious, and she is quite dislikable in this scene. She complains about her father abandoning her and not being there when she needed her. This again maybe is some foreshadowing for the next part. I actually think the sole purpose of this conflict with Chloe and Max here is just to create some forced contrivance, which makes us look at the photo in the next part, and then we realise, oh, we actually have another power. So I can sort of allow it, but it is a bit far. They sort of make Chloe a bit out of character, which I'm not a fan of. There are some sort of weaker parts in this episode, but don't make you think I'm negative to this episode. I love this episode. I think there are some minor things, which I may ramble on a bit too much about, but the episode's still great as a whole. We then get this new power out of nowhere, which I just mentioned, and for as much as I've just slated the last scene, it is worth it, because what we're about to experience now is pure cinema. So, we realise we can look into a photo of the past of Max and Chloe, we can enter this photo and change the past, basically.
Someday Dad'll get one of those
This
newfangled computers.
scene may conflict with the Before the Storm Farewell episode, I believe, but I need to do some double checking on that.
This is a
So
keeper.
you'll find that out in the next part.
You know the rules, Dad. Max,
But the
come
photo
on.
we went back into was the day
Well,
Chloe's
hey,
dad died.
You look totally pale.
The aim here is to prevent that from happening,
Yeah.
prevent Chloe's dad from leaving in a car and getting absolutely mowed down by a
Yeah,
truck.
I'm fine.
Okay, Chloe.
This seems
You
quite fun,
define
because there are many
opportunities
ways you can stop William from leaving, but it seems that every time you try and do something, he has a solution for it. You try and hide the keys, he finds them. You try and unplug the telephone, his mobile gets called, and it just keeps going. The actual solution is to throw his keys out the window. Once we've changed the past and stopped William from leaving, we then get some really on those foreshadowing, which I still love from Chloe, by saying that Max is never leaving her as we get transported to our new reality. I mean, you were kind of wrong there, Chloe.
Dad.
She did leave you,
because
and
tonight your mother promised to make us a
I don't
world
think you're
famous
gonna like
salmon
what's about to happen.
surprise with chocolate cake for dessert.
one thing I don't understand, though, is
She's
why
never
would
leaving me.
William take
That
the
makes all of
bus, which we suggest to him? The whole point of him leaving was to give Joyce a lift to help with the shopping. But what's the point of getting the bus? Like, Joyce, could she not get the bus herself? The only thing I could possibly think of is maybe he needs to carry some of the shopping bags, and Joyce must have like 4 or 5 who got to go in the back of the car. But obviously, if William's not taking his car, that can't happen. So I'm assuming maybe he lifts the bags back. Obviously, in the actual timeline, this didn't happen because he was killed on the way there. But in this timeline, maybe the groceries. I feel sick for saying groceries, by the way, I'm British, we say shopping. But maybe the shopping bags, they take a nice trip on the bus, and this reality, it got back all home safe. But again, I'm getting distracted here discussing shopping and groceries and whatnot. The main thing to get from this is we succeed in preventing William from leaving this car, and therefore change history by making Chloe's father remain alive. I knew something awful was going to happen the second we changed time, like, it was pretty obvious. It still doesn't change the impact, the gut punch of what we're about to see, but, like, I get bad vibes when we do this. Like, the whole concept of the butterfly effect, like, you step into a bug would, like, cause everything to be different from now on. Changing something as big as this is bound to have some negative consequences to teach us, hey, maybe you shouldn't change everything, which is a big lesson this game tries to teach you. The photo of Chloe with her car also in the reality changing thing, where we see photos that did happen now and photos that didn't happen in the other universe because of what we just changed. It's also a gut punch when you consider what her getting the car is about to change. We're then thrown into the new universe where Max is a part of the Vortex Club of all the popular people like Victoria and Nathan, and the exact opposite people she's not friends with in our timeline. It's funny this change came from something that had no impact to this, but I guess that's the butterfly effect in act. It's also interesting to see that the storm-ending events that also happen in this universe. There are numerous beach whales when we're on the bus, which shows that maybe in all universes this storm is just inevitable due to Max's powers. The scene on the bus is also incredible, man. Again, I'll put the song up of what this is. Just listen to the soundtrack of this game. Listen to every song. They're all brilliant. One minor more thing to note is that David turns out to be a bus driver in this game. Another act of the butterfly effect at play. Obviously, because we saved William, Joyce would never have to date David because she's still happily married. Well, I assume they're happily married. I don't know the ins and outs of their relationship, but from next episode and what we see, they seem pretty happy, given the circumstances, which obviously is quite traumatising for any parents knowing all your financial resources have to be put into something that was completely out of your control and is quite sad. Once the bus journey's over, we then frantically go to Chloe's house to see what's happened to her in this timeline, and my jaw genuinely hit the floor when I first saw what actually happened to Chloe. I don't have much more to say about this apart from the fact it's just incredible. It's brilliant writing. This scene might be the best in any Life is Strange game.
Max,
Although there are a few that definitely rival it. But this scene here concludes an excellent episode where we learn that Chloe is actually paralysed as a result of our changes. Seeing her slowly wheel to the front of the door after William calls her up is just shocking. Max is shocked, naturally seeing her best friend in a state like that.
I know she's been dying to see you.
So sad. I can understand people crying in this scene. There are a few other scenes that we may rather that later for tears. This episode is pretty top notch, man. Like, the gut punches start this episode. We get the first one there, and then it's just a non-stop train from here on out, folks. Writing, though, again, as I mentioned, great in general. The ending scene's brilliant. How we got to the ending scene isn't great, but I like the actual flashback. It's just the forced contrivance of Chloe's a bit stupid, and again, the Rachel and Frank relationship is just disgusting, but I like the individual Chloe and Max scenes a lot this episode. I love their relationship building in the pool. I love the scenes in their bedroom and the house at the start of the episode or in the middle part. Their relationship really develops here, and you can take it up another gear with the choice to kiss her, which then leads to something at the end of the game in one of the endings where Max and Chloe could be an actual relationship, which, again, that's my choice. I would always do that in every playthrough I have done. This episode is an easy one to rank for me, undeniably an S tier despite those minor criticisms I had just now. It's clearly the best of the three so far. That isn't a slight on the other two episodes. They are both really solid. This one is just incredible from start to end. The only minor issues, again, I've stated before, but I still can't deny the episode, man. That last scene alone is just enough to be on the S tier. It's just brilliant. It really is. Now, we can move on to the next episode, though, and if you thought last episode was good, then Jesus, we're really going on the ride in episode 4. Episode 4, Dark Room. Episode 4 starts off by showing us how this game can feel so warm and in certain moments. The scenery of the beach with the noise of the waves and the slight glimpse of the lighthouse to remind us of our impending doom really summarises the entirety of this first game in just one picture. This scene is some serious wallpaper material. It reminds me of the beach shot in Better Call Saul, which is also beautiful and is my computer wallpaper. Again, I'll put an image of that on the screen now so you can see the similarities. The actual dialogue of this episode starts between Max and Chloe. Remember, she's currently paralysed as a result of us preventing William from dying. She references her accident and the fact that all our friends in this universe abandoned her after the accident and cut all contact, much like Max cutting contact in the original timeline. That's a common theme for Chloe regardless of the universe. It's also mentioned that Rachel Amber still went missing in this timeline. Chloe did not know her in this timeline though. Opening scene is very forlorn, given the circumstances we are currently in. Also, this Chloe is very different from R1. She comments negatively on Max's use of the word Hella, which if you know Chloe in the other universe, that would never happen. Start of this episode is just such a downer. Like, Chloe explained how much of a burden she feels on her parents. It's very disheartening and sad to hear, especially due to the accident being no fault of hers, and the fact she was cut off by some random truck driver and paid for the rest of her life for it. When you get control of Max's episode, it is interesting to look around Chloe's house into her alternative life and the relationships she has in her phone. By that, I mean Max's phone. You can check her texts throughout the game, and in this universe they're very different due to Max's changed circumstances. At the end of the last episode, we saw Max being friends with Victoria and Nathan, which is completely different from her other persona. Max also makes some observations on things in her diary throughout the game, which you can also check. Diary in this one is quite interesting, but again, the diary is part of the main game, and there's about 60 pages, I think, throughout the game where Max will document her thoughts on what's just happened in the game. This is for the more engaged Life is Strange player who really likes, seeing what the characters have to think about things. So if you're a big fan, I would recommend actually looking at Max's diary entries throughout the game and just getting a deeper insight into what went on throughout the whole game.
No wonder my throat is dry.
Anyways, I'll stop rambling and we can carry on with episode 4. We get a scene of Chloe and Max conversing about their childhood, which hits extra hard here due to Chloe's current situation. It's also amplified by the fact we have just experienced their childhood firsthand. Of course, a childhood scene caused Chloe to have this accident as we went into the childhood scene and changed the future.
Pay all the bills.
The cost of Chloe's medical gear here just makes me want to say, good job American healthcare system. I'm not going to try and get this a massive political debate here, but again, to me at least, it is completely baffling that your government cannot provide basic, almost human rights to your people.
That's why I love you.
I mean,
Of course, I
again,
know a geek when I be one.
it's silly, I think.
See?
Moving on though, it is nice to speak to William also in this universe, and we see the change we made and how he is as a person. William's a very kind person, very nice and pleasant. So I'm glad we saved him. It's just a shame, the other thing happened, which caused this event that we caused to be quite negative in some ways.
Of course, you seem more adult.
In this timeline, I feel that the developers do a great job making Chloe's house just feel so empty and soulless almost compared to what it is. Look, again, not the biggest fan of Chloe's room because it's a bit too, on the nose, edgy, ooh, look at me, hipster, but just seeing the empty boxes, or not maybe empty boxes, but boxes in Chloe's room in this one is quite upsetting. This though is again another thing that you might have missed in your first playthrough. I definitely did. I didn't bother to go into Chloe's room in this timeline, but on my second playthrough I did, and you can have a nice sit down moment with Max and she sort of just ponders the events that have led up to this point. The gut punches come fast in this run between episode 3 and 4.
Oh my god.
Once we go back downstairs and speak to Chloe after getting her a morphine injector due to her being in pain, Chloe asks us to euthanize her, which is an insane request, but I do understand why she would ask this, given the fact that she has disclosed to us that she believes she will be dead soon due to her overhearing what doctors have said, and she believes that there is no point of her staying alive because she's just financially burdened in her parents and she won't be here for much longer. This is an absolutely gut-wrenching thing to hear, and this really hit on first playthrough. I believe it is the correct decision to grant Chloe her request here. One minor thing I'm not doing is surely Max in this universe just set herself up for life in prison. I don't know what works. Like, does this Max just disappear from reality when she goes back into her own universe, or not? They never mention that. I'm glad they do, because I'm not playing this game to know the in-depth laws of time travel and multiple universes, so don't make like an origin game explaining how people get their powers. We don't need that. We don't. Just let the game be about people and their relationships. That's what we.
I'm so proud of you for following.
Once we have done this horrible act, that out of kindness for Chloe, and the tears are flowing, we then look back into a photo book which we've just been reminiscing with Chloe about our childhood. We go back to the day we prevented William from dying, and we reverse that decision. Max and Chloe's dialogue here, man, is pretty gutting.
I tried to make
Max makes a little long statement to Chloe about how she'll never leave her despite Chloe feeling that might be the case, and I wonder how the alternate Chloe we're about to meet
Come on.
thought of that. I know she
You
mentions
had
it
made
vaguely
things
at one point,
different,
I
like my
forget
whole
when,
life.
but
You're my best friend. I've got you.
surely
and a
you,
great family.
you know,
lots to
you'd be
be
pretty
sorry
confused at
for.
the time, and then only
We'll be
hours later
best
find out
friends
your father dies.
And when we
You're like,
grow
well,
up, we're taking
how
over
did
the world.
Max? No,
Listen,
I don't know. Maybe
whatever
Chloe. She was
happens,
probably too overwhelmed to even make the connection
I
there,
want you to
but
be strong.
it's some deep stuff, man.
Even if you feel like I wasn't.
It's interesting to think about.
Because I will never abandon you, Chloe.
Once we've
I'll always
finished
have
our
your
time
back.
hopping, the game puts us right back into the thick of the investigation, like it didn't miss a beat.
You're alive. Yes.
One minor question I have is, what actually changed between this universe we're in now and the original one? There surely must be some minor changes, because although technically the same things happened, again, the whole concept of the butterfly effect is that something minor
But thanks for the morning
can
break.
change everything.
Since
So,
we were
like,
up all night playing
for instance, say we
CSI
took some
Arcadia
different
Bay, I was
steps
still
in Chloe's
spacing
house on
here
the day
trying to
that
put all
we
this info together.
killed William in the end. Like, if we touched something a different way,
Did you
or
forget we've been
ate
over
something
this?
that we didn't in the original
I
one.
hope you weren't messing around
Now,
with
would that
time
change a lot in our universe?
Not
Game doesn't
anymore.
explain. Again, it
I'm
doesn't
just
need to explain
spaced
because
out
I'm just
too.
asking a stupid question here that we don't need to know
Welcome
the
back to
answer
the
of.
real
But
world, Max.
I would still like to know, but it's not that
I
important.
don't think I can ever tell Chloe about what happened.
It seems that not much has changed in this universe because when we go downstairs, we find David playing the
You won
victim
this
again.
battle, Max.
I'll say it for the 50th time.
You broke
You're not an
my
awful
heart.
person, David, but your methods are all wrong.
David.
David
I
is
didn't
presented
try
like
to
the
hurt
suspicious
you.
guy here throughout the entire
Ever.
game, which I've said it
I won't let
well
anyone
before, but
hurt
it
Chloe.
makes it pretty obvious he
Too
isn't
late.
the bad guy
Yeah.
he's made out to be. Again,
Just
though, I understand that
Better be damn
most,
careful with it.
literally every mystery
want
in
her
like
off
it's a
to the
murder
door.
mystery on TV, a film, they will have a red herring. I respect his role as that in this game. Once we finished up in Chloe's house after getting back into the investigation, we are met with a Kate scene, which is pretty fan servicey, but I enjoy it enough though. Also serves the purpose of rewarding you for keeping Kate alive by giving you Nathan's room number, which isn't a very important detail. Well, it's important, but it's pretty obvious to get without the help of Kate. But you know, it's nice to get something for keeping Kate alive. And again, Kate's a fun character. She's enjoyable to speak to, so I'm glad we get this more screen time of her. Again, I actually think the developers added this after realising that Kate was quite a popular character. I'm pretty sure this scene wasn't originally supposed to be in the game. So, maybe that's an advantage of these episodic games, that they can change on the fly based on fan demand. Although, again, a lot of the time the fans are idiots and are wrong. So, don't hire fans a lot of the time.
You made me realize I wasn't alone.
Once we've met Kate, we then have to go and find more evidence about Rachel and Kate. If you didn't know, the Kate scene is just a pretty typical discussion. There's not much you'll miss there. I might put some minor clips here of it, but it's just a chill conversation. As I said, this game has some really relaxing moments, and then it doesn't. This is one of those relaxing moments. Anyways, I digress. We finish with Kate, we go to the dorms, we have to enter Nathan's room and find evidence that would link him to these mysteries of Rachel and Kate. In particular here, we try to get his phone. Once we break into Nathan's room, we can see how twisted some of his photography is. There's some really, like, sus horror film stuff here. I'll put some photos of it up here. But it's very dark, both literally and figuratively. That's Nathan's room, by the way. We retrieve Nathan's phone from behind his couch and then prepare to leave the dorms. Whilst we're leaving with Chloe, out of nowhere, Nathan arrives back at the dorm as we're leaving and bumps into us. He starts threatening us, of course he does, it's Nathan. Side note here, but I love how he says, "What are you doing in my dorm?" Like, I'm sure your family paid for it and all, but like 10 other people live here still. It's not your dorm, it's, you know, everyone's dorm. I sound like a communist here, you know. Anyways, I should stop my crappy attempts at humour. Warren comes out of nowhere and you have a decision to make. Either stop Warren beating the crap out of Nathan, or don't. Now, this is a pretty easy decision. Seeing Nathan getting pulverised into the ground is pretty satisfying, and you know, violence is bad and all, but you know, some people deserve to get a slap. More than a slap in this case. He gets absolutely destroyed. So yeah, Warren, I don't like you, but you're a real one for doing this, man. I could watch a 10-hour comp of Nathan getting like 10 CDEs. Once we've seen this MMA fight, we then go to the front of Blackwell, and I actually think this is the last time we see Blackwell in the game. Obviously, there are some dream sequences in the next episode where we're in Blackwell, but you know, that's not real. At the end of this episode, we're on the Blackwell campus vaguely for the party, but we don't actually see the main building that, you know, we're at right now. Once we're done with the school, then we've got Nathan's phone. We get the last bit of clue finding for the investigation, which involves meeting Frank at the beach. And I'm sounding like a broken record here, but the scenery in this game is incredible. Beach view is gorgeous. We saw it in the alternate timeline. It looks just as good in this one. Apart from the beach wells, I feel quite bad for them. Now, moving on to the discussion with Frank. I believe it has a major issue with the choices here, though, because if you stole the money in the last episode from the disabled people to repay Frank, it doesn't make a single difference to the conversation. You think Frank would be a bit nicer to you, you know, if you got his money back, but I guess not. Again, sound like a broken record. Why are they mentioning the Frank and Rachel relationship again like it's normal? It's weird. I don't like seeing Frank. It ruins his character. I don't want to see you because I know you were grooming minors, basically. Anyways, I'll try and be as analytical of the scene here, but the actual scene with Frank and the dialogue is quite tense. I messed this up an untold amount of times, which led to him and his dog's death. The dog I feel sorry for, Frank, no. Maybe death's a bit far. Actually, no, it's not. You were speaking with people half your age. That's pretty wrong. But, getting distracted again. If you speak with Frank the correct way and you actually please him, you can convince him to give him his drug dealer notebook of code names for people, because Frank seems pretty concerned with what happened to Rachel and believes that if he does this, he'll help to cover the mystery of what actually happened to Rachel. This confirms Frank is a nice guy in quotations again, despite the fact that, again, I've said why he's not, but this proves that he probably didn't cut Rachel into small pieces and put her in a blender, which is somewhat comforting to know, I guess, but, I mean, he still, you know, should be in prison, Frank, despite that.
Thanks, Frank.
But we know, again, he wasn't the main culprit of what happened to Rachel, he just, you know, did some other illegal stuff to her. Once we're back at Chloe's room, after our investigation is finished, we then have a puzzle sequence to match clues and determine what is useful to our investigation. This is done by looking at all we have gained from David, Frank and Nathan so far. To cut a long story short, we basically learn that Nathan visited a sus place on the night of the party where he also bought drugs from Frank.
Hold on.
The place he visited is owned by the Prescotts and is a barn in the middle of nowhere. I understand this can be pretty confusing for a lot of people, but I'm not sure on that one. Maybe you understood it better than I did. I still understand it, but I can understand why people might find it a bit hazy.
Call the police?
But again, cut a long story short, Nathan apparently, it seems, took Kate to a barn in the middle of nowhere, which doesn't bode well for her. Although we know she's fine, but you know, maybe some other people went into that barn and maybe they left in a slightly worse position than they were in before. I'm kind of glad they avoided the cliche of us visiting this barn at night, as it was already sketchy enough for me. I can't describe strongly enough the feeling of uneasiness I get when I'm at this barn, even on all other playthroughs. This barn just... it's not in the context of the game, obviously, but I hate it. I hate how it makes me feel. And I love the game for doing that to me. The game that can draw such strong emotions out of me, which is why I love it. The barn, it's such a simple thing, but it's just... it's scary, man. Maybe I've seen too many horror films where, you know, people get killed at secluded places. But yeah, the barn, I like it as a setting. I don't like it for what it makes me feel. Our first introduction to the darkroom is very eerie, continuing on from this theme in the barn. The main wonder we have here is, what the hell is this state-of-the-art photography room doing in the middle of nowhere in a barn? Obviously there must be some pretty nefarious uses for this if it's this hidden. Naturally, there are, and we uncover the folders of Kate and Rachel that we have seen throughout some of the ending of the episodes. Maybe it's suspected, but it's still quite a big surprise seeing these folders with their names in it. Also, there's a folder of Victoria's name, which suggests she may be in potential danger. But we check through the folders naturally after Chloe finds them, and the Kate folder is just photos of her in a very drugged out state, it seems. Obviously, though, we know Kate is fine now. When we see these images of Rachel, it's a bit more scary, especially considering there is an image of Rachel being lowered into a place by Nathan somewhere. Chloe seems to know the location of this, and it's a pretty scary sight considering that Rachel seems pretty out of it. Maybe in a permanent way.
I don't think so.
Once we've made this harrowing discovery, Chloe rushes us to where she thinks this photo was taken, and it involves a trip to the junkyard, and then we uncover the truth.
Let's go.
Chloe, slow down! Wait for me!
I know exactly where I'm going. Look, this is it. This is it. Are you gonna help me, Max?
Chloe, stop! Look.
Please, no.
Oh, that smell!
Rachel!
Oh.
Oh, Rachel, no, please not her!
Chloe.
Rachel, what?
I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry.
I loved her so much. How can she be dead? What kind of world does this? Who does this?
I can't say this wasn't expected, but it is a incredibly painful gut punch. I hate that the music isn't on for this scene because it's incredible and I'll put it up. I regret having to do this playthrough without music, but it's still incredible, this scene. And it's the answer to the main question we've been looking for the whole game. You've seen Rachel Amber every turn despite her not physically being here, and now we know what happened to her, and it's tragic, man. We have a doe overlooking the scene, and it really contributes to the harrowing feeling of knowing how Rachel was killed. Especially those who have played Before the Storm, as you know the connection Chloe had of her and how real it was. The game's plot primarily being driven by Chloe's relationships only help to compound the sense of loss we feel as the player, as we've seen Rachel's best friend hunting for her, and now she knows the truth after thinking she might have abandoned her, but it turns out she never did. I will say, Don't Nod do an excellent job in this scene of just letting the grief and anguish speak for itself in this scene. We don't get some insane overacting. Obviously Chloe cries quite loudly, but there's not some massive monologue of how sad Chloe feels. She just let the pure emotion speak for itself, which I love. Again, mentioning the doe, it really gives credence to the theory that the doe is Rachel Amber's spirit who has met us at certain points in the game, and it also ties her into the theory that she is connected to the storm. Maybe this is comforting in some way, because it is slightly comforting to feel that we know that Rachel was with us at points throughout this game. You'd think they would end the episode here, though, given the heavy nature of what just occurred, but no. It rolls on. I was really surprised it's the first time I played. I thought this was a great way to end the episode, but no, they keep piling on the trauma. Max and Chloe visit a party which is planned for this day with the intent of putting a permanent end to Nathan, which honestly, after what they've just seen, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'll back that. Chloe only has a desire for revenge, and again, you can understand why. She just believes that Nathan murdered her best friend and buried her in the middle of a junkyard. So, you know, a pretty harsh response is maybe in order.
Right.
Anyways, we sit in the car park with Chloe, and she again is ranting off about what she's going to do to Nathan. And after this, we attempt to enter the party, but we bump into a drunk Warren who asks for a photo. This is only being mentioned because I'm sure this picture won't be useful later. You know, I'm sure. Now, this is the scene I was talking about earlier. The party scene without music is so goofy, it's hilarious. I'm just going to play a bit of audio here of it just on its own. It's quite something. And another minor thing, I haven't really spoken about these side character discussions you can have through the game because they're not that relevant to the rankings in this video, but I just want to show this shirt of Daniel's at this party. Like, I'm only including this because I started laughing when I saw this. I never saw this before, and it's bloody hilarious. Once we navigate through the party and get to the Vortex Club section where we expect Nathan to be, we find Victoria, who you can attempt to warn her about her impending doom given the fact that we just found her folder in the darkroom. You really should do this considering we just saw what happened with Rachel, but funnily enough, not warning Victoria of what's about to happen to her is the best action because of what she does if you warn her. Let's just say she goes to the wrong person to speak about this. Another issue with choices in this discussion though, Victoria is still pretty horrible to you even if you've been nice to her for the game. And I get maybe that's just her character and she's pretty horrible non-stop, so maybe that's just her. But, you know, maybe a bit of leeway, Victoria, you know, cut some slack. I've been pretty nice to you throughout this game. But this could just be an issue of me, and maybe her being like this to Max the whole time just fits her character, because she'd always be like that. I know that.
I mean, she might be evil.
Anyways, after spending a sizable amount of time in the party, we realise we can't find Nathan. We suddenly bump into Jefferson. When Max and Chloe make the biggest mistakes of their lives by telling Jefferson they're looking for Nathan. Although I'm pretty sure he already knew that they knew of the darkroom by probably some cameras in the darkroom that records its activity, and Jefferson probably knew that they were onto him. Well, not onto him, but onto the creation of the darkroom and what actually happened in there, which is pretty tragic. I actually forgot to explain what happens in the darkroom. Silly me. Basically, we think that Nathan was drugging girls there and taking photos. We don't know why he killed Rachel and not Kate at this point, but that will all be explained later when the big bad villain reveals himself. Anyways, once we leave the party, we get a text received by Chloe, supposedly from Nathan, who insists that he is getting rid of the evidence, and once he's done there will be nothing left of Rachel. My one question here, though, from a plot point of view, is why would you believe that Nathan is texting you this now? Like, how would he know that you know? That makes no sense. That being said, I don't think Chloe's exactly thinking rationally at this point, given the extreme trauma she faced only a few hours prior to this. So again, I can cut some slack. Probably wasn't thinking clearly. Once we've received this text, we rush to the junkyard. And this scene is incredibly scary. Probably the scariest in the game. There is a note here that you can find in the hideout. And in episode 2, you can write a note under where it says Chloe was here and Rachel was here, saying Max was here. But now, this note has been changed to Rachel is here from Rachel was here. That is terrifying. I'll make sure to put this up. I only found this on the subreddit of the game. Or something like that. It was either that or a video. And, man, I don't know why they'd add this. It's such a niche thing to add, but it just, I don't know, this really scares me in a way. But once we're in the junkyard, we go back to Rachel's body, and all seems to be fine. Her corpse, well, not fine, obviously, actually, that's probably the wrong way of doing it. She is dead at the ground, but, you know, her corpse is still there. Nathan's nowhere to be seen. But then we get the grand reveal of who the main antagonist is.
Oh, no. Chloe! Look out!
What the fuck?
Chloe.
And this one really caught me off guard in the first playthrough. After this reveal, Chloe gets shot in the face after trying to shoot the big bad after he drugged Max. There was some foreshadowing in the first episode of Jefferson, but most people would have missed this and only seen it afterwards.
Seriously, though, I could frame any one of you in a dark corner and capture you in a moment of desperation.
The reveal that he's the main guy being controlling this the whole time raises even more questions for us and sets up incredibly well for the final episode, as there is clearly some explaining to see why this random teacher orchestrated the death of someone, allegedly, from what we believe so far, and also was drugging other students, and also just shot one in the face. That's maybe a minor detail we might have glossed over a little bit. But the stakes are raised in the final episode, knowing that now we need to save Chloe, because we just watched her get bloody shot in the face in front of us, which, is not an ideal situation. But now we can move on to the rank of this episode, and I really struggled to split episode 3 and episode 4. They really are both incredible. I knew this already, but what really compounded it for me is when I was playing through the game, I was making notes for the script of this, and I averaged roughly around 1,000 words per episode for each episode. For this in episode 3, I checked my word count after, it was only about 500 words per episode. Even on my third playthrough of this game, it still engrossed me so much. Like, episode 4, all killer, no filler from start to finish. I can't think of a single real issue with this episode, bar the Frank relationship issues, which, I've spoken about in a lot of detail already. But again, this has everything you want in a Life is Strange episode. You get the calming, comforting scenes on a beachfront, but then you get dark undertones which tell you that this game can pull the rug out from under you at any moment, leaving you feel absolutely devastated. There's many moments that we have to euthanize Chloe, we watch her get shot in the face, we learn the truth about Rachel. I love the tragic conclusion to the Rachel Amber plotline and the reveal about the individual seemingly behind the Rachel and Kate cases. This episode is an easy S tier, and I'd probably rank it slightly above episode 3, but I would not blame you for switching them around. It just, depends on your preference. Minor detail from this episode as well, that's top tier. I love seeing Nathan getting beaten up. But again, that's not the main part why I love this episode. Now, though, we can move on to the grand finale of the first Life is Strange game, and boy, I have a lot to say about this one. Episode 5, Polarized. Well, here we are, we finally reached grand conclusions to the first game, and this is an interesting one to say the least. We start off in the dark room, as a result of last episode's ending, with the reveal that Jefferson is our antagonist, and the fact he also drugged us and shot Chloe. This scene is incredibly dark, no pun with the dark room, and I can see why they didn't go even darker than this, because this is more than enough to portray someone as evil as Jefferson is here. I mean, like, Max is tied down to the chair and Jefferson is quite menacing. We learn that he's been taking a lot of photos like he did of Kate and Rachel. Well, as we'll learn later, he didn't take it, but, it's the same type of situation. Although I hate to say it doesn't take too long for my first issue of this episode to rear its ugly head. The main issue here is that Jefferson is just way too much of a moustache-twirling villain. He's too cliche. He just feels like kind of a joke, and I really can't take him seriously. Some subtlety wouldn't go amiss, because he just explains what has happened and what his reasons for having the darkroom in his actions are. Like, he explains it flat out to you. There's no subtlety, it's just all out in the open. He's just given exposition.
Glad you asked that question. Simply put, I'm obsessed with the idea of capturing that moment innocence evolves into corruption. That shift from black to white to gray and beyond. Most models are cynical. They lose that naivete. However, some Blackwell students carry their hope and optimism with them like an aura, And those lucky few become my models.
This might just also be because his voice sounds really goofy to me too, and sort of the performance doesn't really match the vibe that you get from a guy who is basically essentially kidnapping girls and tying them down and taking photos of them. It sounds like he's in a play. I don't know.
Let me try this angle.
Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. I will say though, I do like the framing in this scene. When you go back through the photos to when you were on the ground being taken photos of by Jefferson, I like the framing of how much Jefferson is in control of us. He's very tall and Max is on the floor.
Thanks, Max.
Again, this is a pretty base level thing, but I just like, we know we're not in control visually as well as, through the writing and the conversations between Max and Jefferson. Jefferson gets very agitated at Max for even the minor things she does. If she moves slightly, Jefferson is raging. Which again shows the childlike nature of my guess, and I suppose you have to be pretty poorly mentally developed, for this to be a hobby of yours. But anyways, as we go through different scenes of Jefferson taking photos of us, we finally get access to our photos. Jefferson had our diary, and he passed it over to us, and we were able to look at the image that started this episode off in the classroom in the first episode. I do love how they took us back to where this entire adventure began. Although, when we're back in the classroom, I don't get why Max decides to enter the photography contest now. This is probably just down to me being an idiot, though. Is there a reason that she entered it this time instead of before? Like, I know she was trying to annoy Jefferson, but, surely you could annoy him by, baiting out his bunker where he kidnapped girls and led to the death of Rachel. And, obviously, before this point, Kate. Again, though, we do that, and our first and most important action, once going back in time, is to text David the location of the dark room and to get Jefferson and Nathan arrested, which works perfectly well. I also like when we go back in time, we're able to speak to Kate in the classroom, because obviously, in this universe, we might not be able to do the same things we did to Kate before to stop her from jumping off the roof, but now we can intervene before that happened with Kate, and we can really let her know that regardless of what she's feeling, we'll always be there for her. This is similar to what we did with Chloe when we let her father die for the second time after originally preventing it and realising that was the wrong thing to do.
I don't know what to say.
That's okay.
But anyway, this conversation with Kate's a lovely moment in this extremely dark final episode. I also like how Max is so upfront to Jefferson afterwards. She also absolutely cooks Victoria in the classroom for bullying Kate and leading her to almost killing herself.
To destroy their life. Are you proud of yourself?
And again, continuing the themes of our episodes, we save Chloe another time by stopping Jefferson. Not sure how many times we've done it throughout this game, but I'm pretty sure it's up to 4 at this point. Once we're out of the flashback and we go forward into this universe where Jefferson and Nathan have both been arrested before they were able to commit crimes, so Max and Chloe, we find ourselves on a plane to San Francisco as a result of winning the photography competition. This got us a trip, which originally was meant to be with Jefferson to an art gallery in San Francisco, but now obviously because he's sort of in prison for doing a lot of illegal stuff with the Principal Wells. I think the purpose of this scene of going to San Francisco is sort of a way to show us a glimpse of Max's photography life and what could have been in an alternate universe like we're in right now. But this is another sequence that I'm not too crazy about. This seems like the type of scene that would be really useful if there was a sequel to this game. Maybe in a sequel Max would go into this life of work, and this would be the first glimpse we get into it. But there's not a sequel, so I just think this is a pretty pointless scene. Look, I'm not completely ruling out the chance of a sequel. You never know, there might still be one, but I'm like 99% sure there won't be. I really don't see the time in the final episode of this scene. Considering the main plot of this game now is the relationship between Max and Chloe in the storm, I just don't see the use of taking us completely away from it. I'm not sure what I would have done, because I'm not some genius writer who up to this point would have written this game. I wouldn't have a clue what to do. Don't know, clearly did a great job of it at this point, but I feel like it sort of starts to go a bit downhill in this last episode, and they weren't sure what they wanted to do. Like, I would much rather see Max and Chloe in this final episode. It's what I play this game for, and Chloe sort of gets written out for over half the episode, which again, not a fan of. Whilst we are on the plane on the way to San Francisco, we learn that the events of the storm are still happening in this universe. You can read in the newspaper, and there's some stuff about weird events happening back in Arcadia Bay. Also, Max has another nosebleed in the plane. This isn't developed after this, and we don't know if the nosebleeds are an indication of a larger issue with Max as a result of changing time constantly. Again, this is another thing that didn't really get a payoff. We learned that, Max got nosebleeds throughout the game, but more like, would it be a a bigger issue later in time. Again, though, there was no sequel, so we're not going to know that. And it's not the biggest issue at the end of the day. My assumption over the nosebleeds that I take out of it is that it's another way of the game telling you that you shouldn't try and go back and constantly change what's happened, and it's best to deal with the consequences of the decisions you made, because Mac's clearly pushing herself to keep changing time. Maybe it's negatively affecting her body, and it's rejecting it. Once we're off the plane, we get to the photography convention, and I don't know if it's trying to mock these art conventions, but it really seems like it is of how people speak at these events. I'll put a few clips up of people speaking here. They just seem really goofy. I don't know, though.
Look at this print. The depth of field, the colors. Look at the bokeh shape. This was definitely shot with a medium format camera using a Leica 35mm lens. You can definitely find out those details.
He's in jail along with Nathan.
Another thing in this final episode which I'm not a fan of is they cop out the Prescott plotline. Throughout the game, which I haven't really mentioned much, the Prescott family have been seen as like this all evil, like they're controlling all of Arcadia Bay and they're like linked to the storm in some way. Whereas in this episode we learn, oh never mind, they're just slightly corrupt, which I was really let down with this. I thought the Prescotts would have a much bigger role to play in this story, but I guess not. I think there's some theories that like there were budget constraints in the last episode for Don't Nod, so they had to like rewrite a bit. And I think there's also some deleted Nathan plot lines where Nathan knows about the storm before anyone else does and it happens. So maybe that gives credence again to the theory that the Prescotts were meant to play a bigger role, but external factors changed that, which is quite disappointing. I was like expecting some like Twin Peaks season 3 type thing, where like the fate of Arcadia Bay and Rachel Amber was predetermined years before, and the Prescotts knew all this was going to happen, but I guess not. Again, go watch Twin Peaks. The third season, which is set like nearly 30 years after the original one, it's pretty weird, but good. Back to the photography convention though. In the middle of this, we get a call from Chloe who confirms us that the tornado is currently hitting Arcadia Bay in this universe. This leads us to travel back to the photo we won this competition with and to rip it up to prevent us from going to San Francisco. Unfortunately though, the action of ripping up our photo that won us this competition leads us to being back in the darkroom. I'm really not sure why this happened. If you have an idea, please explain this in the comments for me, because the only thing I have is that the version of Max created by destroying the photo after San Francisco was running the autopilot and did not have all the information on the darkroom available to her, so therefore she was not able to warn David, and therefore it led Chloe and Max to repeat the same events that got Max in the darkroom and Chloe shot. Maybe I'm just missing something though. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Fuck you.
But there's also a bigger issue now, is the fact that clearly we must have angered Jefferson in some way by tearing up that image. So now we are in the darkroom and we do not have access to our diary, so we cannot do what we did before and go back to the classroom. So we're stuck down here and it looks like we're about to die. Jefferson will give us a lethal injection after getting all the photos he needs from us. Again though, I will say this once again, Jefferson needs to stop explaining every single feeling and thing in the most obvious way possible. This is just before he prepares to give Max an overdose. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, as Max is about to die, David comes in clutch and dispatches of Jefferson. There's a pretty funny puzzle sequence here where you can let David know what's about to happen before he enters the room, and Jefferson seems pretty confused, and rightfully so. It is nice to see David's own investigation come to fruition though, and he finally puts the pieces together that he's gathered just, a bit later than a bunch of teenage girls did. But, at least you got there in the end, David.
Yes.
David was harsh towards us throughout the entire game, but is arguably the best written character in the game. Extremely flawed, but he's also realistically flawed, He has his bad moments, but he also has good moments like now, where it turns out he was really doing it for the good of Blackwell. He was really worried about the safety there. Again, went about it in the wrong way, but his, intentions were there. In the conversation to Max afterwards, he is very honest about his flaws and seems deeply remorseful about the mistakes he's made, though, towards his family throughout the game. It's a shame there is no actual full happy ending for him, though, and, I have a suspicion we might see him in another game. We'll see, though, I don't know.
Pretty obvious.
Then there's a choice here about telling the truth to David about how the fact that Chloe is currently dead or not. I can hide the truth in this, personally, because we don't plan on being in this universe for much longer, and David survives either way. And personally, I plan on making another choice later, which would deeply impact David. But You have to wait and see for that one. Once David is finished with us, we finally escape the dark room completely, and we need to find a way to save Chloe again, obviously, because our diary was destroyed, so we can't back through. Hey, it's funny there was a photo of Warren last episode. I'm sure he didn't have that one, but let's go check anyway. Anyways, in the car on the way to Warren, who is currently at the diner, bear in mind the town is being hit by the tornado right now, so it's chaos. We get a call from Jefferson from the evening before, I believe, who expresses his guilt and the fact that Jefferson is going to kill him, dispatch of him, and therefore frame him and his family for the murder of Rachel, and just, you know, the twisted actions of the dark room in general. Nathan was used by Jefferson, it's apparent here, and that he was acting under his thumb. Turns out Nathan killed Rachel by giving her an overdose and botching the drug usage, unlike that happened with Kate. Kate didn't get an overdose. She ended up fine. Well, not fine, obviously, but, you know, comparatively to Rachel. Maybe some people feel sorry for Nathan, but I really don't. Like, I get, you know, he was groomed, technically, by Jefferson, but, you know, your actions still led to somebody getting killed. Like, you know, surely there's a point of, you know, no return. Like, surely eventually you realise, okay, maybe, you know, I shouldn't be doing this. You know, he's not as bad as Jefferson, but I still have no sympathy for Nathan. And his death, you know, is oddly satisfied. I'll mention the issue that I mentioned before, though, again, up to this point. There is a distinct lack of Chloe in this final episode, despite her being practically the main character, in my opinion. The only thing we've heard from her so far was the call in San Francisco. Given she's been in the vast majority of the game up to this point, I feel this was a poor decision, but I can understand why, given the state of the plot, what they wrote themselves into at the end of episode 4. Although this becomes much more of an issue of a lack of Chloe when we get a later sequence where there's a lack of everything. But as we're driving through the storm to the diner where Warren is currently located, we can see how Arcadia Bay has been absolutely decimated by the storm, and the main part of the storm is still to come. We're not even in the thick of it yet. They did a great job of making the storm look absolutely terrifying because it is huge. Once we've driven through this storm, we make it to the diner and we're able to speak to Joyce, who we can convince to remain with David. I think his actions in the dark room have warranted that, and he actually has shown proper compassion for Joyce and Chloe, so it wasn't all that bad in the end. It's a shame this family will not be reunited though in any timeline from this point onwards though. But I like to convince Joyce that she should stick with David. We also get the chance to speak with Frank, who is upset over Rachel and still doesn't know what happened to her. This is further compounded when we tell him of her fate and the fact that she was killed with drugs that he sold to Nathan. My main question again, how am I supposed to feel sorry for Frank here? Genuinely awful human, you sell drugs to people half your age. You're also romantically involved with people half your age. Obviously you didn't intend to kill Rachel, but you know, you can't expect otherwise. You're a drug dealer. People get hurt by drug dealers. We finally communicate with Warren to get this photo in the diner, and he can hold that. He gives us the photo, but he spends a while waffling to us, and I'm really not interested at this point in the episode. It's to, you know, reach the climax of the game. I want to progress forward. I want to meet Chloe, not you. Thanks for beating Nathan up, Warren, but my Max, not romantically interested in you. Go away. We look through the photo and return to the party entrance, where we finally see Chloe. It only took an hour and a half in this episode. Max is obviously thrilled to see her after the experience of the dark room and witnessing Chloe being shot in front of her. Max warns Chloe about Jefferson and also the fact that Jefferson killed Nathan and the whole dark room stuff which we just experienced. Max tells Chloe she doesn't want to lose her again, and Chloe seems to agree. Max warns Chloe about her having to fix everything with time travel, which we've seen over all the episodes. Max also finally tells Chloe of the alternate reality she entered where Chloe was paralysed. This is a really heartfelt scene which really shows the relationship that Max and Chloe have redeveloped over these 5 episodes. One final thing to note in this conversation is Max telling Chloe about David saving her finally. This finally makes Chloe respect David somewhat after all these other despising him, which again is another positive of Playing Before the Storm. We see this relationship between them even further. The main thing we draw out of this conversation is it stops Chloe from going ahead and progressing to the party to find Nathan, which then leads to her not getting shot by Jefferson, obviously, because we didn't goes to
through so
Jefferson,
much.
and Duke goes to the junkyard where he can
I
jump
believe
us.
Max.
We just spend the
After
day
all,
hiding
I'm still your faithful companion.
in Chloe's room
Yes.
instead of,
Oh.
you know, in the dark room,
So
which is always a
listen,
positive.
In a few minutes, I won't know any of this.
One minor thing to note is I would really love a minor DLC episode of what Chloe and Max did between the party scene and them at the lighthouse. Or maybe I'd love to have seen it compared to what we get after this in the actual episode. Anyways, we'll get to that now. But we get thrusted right back into the storm after our time cut is done. We are on the beachfront with Chloe, and the storm is happening. There's a nice heartfelt scene again with Chloe and Max here, continuing from the last discussion, where Max and Chloe discuss the fact that they may be inevitable together, and that fate doesn't want them apart, as we've seen that Max has been given this time power, which his main thing so far has been saving Chloe all the time. This conversation is again a continuation of them saying how much they care for each other, which we just saw. But again, I needed more Chloe this episode, so any more Chloe in this episode is always a positive to me. Chloe also touches on an interesting theory here of the storm, about the storm being Rachel's revenge, which I really like the idea of. I believe this idea of Rachel having superpowers relating to weather is vaguely hinted at in the first episode of Before the Storm, but it would be a cool idea if her death triggered the storm somehow. I don't know how this would happen, but this game is not meant to be realistic from a scientific point of view, so anything is possible. Although the Rachel controlling the storm idea does get debunked in one of the endings that will be coming up, but I really like this theory, and if it was somehow true in my canon, I'd make it true.
I can't even believe this is real.
But regardless, once this conversation with Chloe is finished with Max, she suddenly passes out, and then we randomly wake up in the middle of the classroom, which seems weird if you think we're in a time loop. Turns out we're not in a time loop, we're just having a dream.
Pieces of time.
I will say, in this first part, I really love when the birds hit the window and the window start getting painted red in blood.
Keep that to yourself.
Really caught me off guard.
Seriously though,
It's
I could
the
frame
best
any
part
one
of the
you
upcoming
want.
dream sequence already at the start.
Capture you in a moment
You
of
may be able to
suspense.
tell that I really don't like this dream sequence. After this, then, we get put into a sequence where we have to do stealth and dodge a bunch of lights against all our antagonist characters so far. Again, I just don't see why we need a massive stealth sequence which has no relevance. This is by far and away the worst thing in the first game. One, because it's a long stealth sequence, and two, the amount of times I failed this even on another playthrough. It's just so annoying. Maybe I was trying to rush for it too quickly, but it just really annoyed me. Like, the main issue I have with this stealth sequence and the dream sequence in general is it's not showing us anything new or interesting. It doesn't make sense to the rest of the game. It feels so out of place. Like, there's a part where Chloe is belittling Max in her dream, and what does this have to do with the last 4 episodes?
Oh Christ!
I don't. There's no conflict between them really. There's minor conflict, but nothing that Max would be like paranoid about that Chloe doesn't actually like her. I mean, you've seen the discussions they've had throughout these episodes. Their feelings are clearly extremely strong for each other.
Let's
There is one interesting part in the dream sequence of the diner where you enter and all the people throughout the game are there and they're commenting on how you've like impacted them negatively in some way, which is quite interesting, but it's not enough to save this dream sequence as a whole. I really would love to be able to say more about this section, but I really just can't. I just think it's a grand waste of time in this final episode. I would have loved to have seen more plot relevant stuff at the game's climax. This section just screams to me that the developers were struggling to make the episode a similar length to the other ones, so they had to put something in that would pad the runtime a bit.
Thanks for saving me.
The final part of this dream sequence, though, is a scene where we go through all the scenes of the game so far. We sort of walk through them in like a gallery sort of way. The scenes light up when we walk past them, which I don't mind this bit. This game is an absolute journey, so I don't mind reminiscing about all the events that have led to the conclusion of this story by the lighthouse. This also reinforces the fact that Chloe is definitely the main character, despite us not playing at her. These scenes that we review in this dream sequence part, the dialogue of them plays, and the dialogue is nearly all Chloe's here. The vast majority. Max says some minor things as well. By the way, this is just repeating voice lines from the game that we've heard already. They're not adding new stuff. But again, the dialogue is dominated by Chloe. She is the main character. Max is sort of just like a blank canvas that we can paint a bit. She has vague personality traits, but nothing too major compared to Chloe. Once we have finished this dream sequence, which drags, I've rushed through it here, but it's quite long. Probably about 45 minutes or so. We wake up being practically dragged by Chloe to the top of the cliff. Here, we can see the full destruction of the storm that is headed to the town as we get a great view by basically standing above the whole town. Max blames her own powers for the storm due to her change in fate in the bathroom in episode 1, where they believe that Chloe was meant to die. Although Chloe says that this power saved her and also let them find out the truth about Rachel, because obviously if Chloe died, they would have had a grand investigation which discovered the truth about Rachel. Although after this discussion between Max and Chloe, Chloe finally realises that maybe the only way to stop the storm is to go back to the bathroom and don't prevent Nathan from killing her. Chloe realises some of her selfish traits which are definitely present, and that how this has negatively impacted the people in her life, mainly her mother, who constantly has had to deal with trauma in her life, which Chloe also has as well, but Chloe hasn't always made it the easiest for Joyce. She wants to sacrifice herself for her family to survive, and also all the residents of Arcadia Bay, who are obviously in grave danger here because there's a massive storm coming to wipe their entire town off the map. Chloe also finally mentions that maybe death is a real destiny due to the amount of times she died or nearly died this week, which I've already touched on, that we save her a lot of times throughout this game. Maybe the whole time fate has been willing her to die, and the fact she hasn't is the reason the storm has occurred, as sort of like a trade-off that if you keep Chloe alive, a lot more people are going to die. Again, this could be another theory that Rachel is behind this storm, as she wants Chloe to die so they can be reunited, which would be extremely dark, but I really love it in that way somehow, and it's definitely plausible in the Life is Strange universe. So, again, I'm all for this theory. Don't think it's true, but it's a really cool one to think about. But returning back to the more important thing that matters here, which is Chloe's character arc. Her arc is her finally realising that she has to make a sacrifice, and has sacrificed herself for the whole town at this point. She's been constantly resentful of this town throughout the whole game. This again links to the relationship with her mother, because throughout the game we often learn about how the hardships of her family life and everything have impacted her, but there's not much room for sympathy for her mother from Chloe. Obviously there's minor bits, and she definitely cares about her mother, I would never doubt that, but again, Chloe has done some pretty self-centered stuff throughout this game, like again, stopping you with a phone call from Kate. I mean, she obviously apologised for this later on, but it still happened. And also, the scene in the car where she says she has to blame somebody for something, otherwise she'll blame herself, and she doesn't want to do that. Which again, self-centered, but I do like it in the end. Chloe does finally realise the error of some of her ways, and makes the ultimate sacrifice in a way. Or at least offers to, in my version, because you know where I'm taking it. It's moving back to this final choice of either sacrificing Chloe or Arcadia Bay, and I have slight issues of leaving the whole game to a binary choice, but I'm not sure what else they could have done with the plot they left themselves with at this point in the final episode. It should be noted that I don't dislike this choice by any means, and for me, my belief in sacrificing Chloe is narratively and logically the better choice here, but I can never do it. I wish I could play the music here for these, but just listen to the song and the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay ending, man. It's brilliant. Again, I'll put it up again here, the song name. But I can't play it obviously because I don't get shot down by copyright. The main thing this ending has taught me again is I'm Team Max and Chloe to the end, man. I just can't split them up. The reason I believe this ending to be worse though is the lack of the aftermath compared to the Sacrifice Chloe ending. It seems that the developers wanted sacrificing Chloe to be the preferred ending, because we just get one minor scene of them driving through the wreck of Arcadia Bay if you decide to sacrifice that in this ending. Which the scene's impactful, but it's nowhere near as emotionally scarring and impactful as the other ending. I still do really like the ending of Max and Chloe departing to start a new life somewhere else though. In this new life, they would obviously have to reckon with the guilt of the entire town they grew up in being destroyed and most of their friends and family being killed who were remaining in the town. I mean, I'm not actually sure of how many survived. You can get some minor clues in a later game about this, but it's nothing major. You've got to assume the vast majority of people died here. I mean, the town's absolutely decimated in this ending. For those who are fans of this ending, there are some comics which follow this ending, but I have to say I wasn't too crazy in them. The early ones are really good, but it sort of falls off. Don't listen here, by the way, if you don't want spoilers, but the main issue I have with these comics is that Max and Chloe are separated for the vast majority of the comics, when 90% of people who read these comics just want to see them together. That's why they picked this ending. Now, despite my love of the other ending, I feel like it is important that in this video I need to discuss the other ending as well. I think this one is simply jaw-dropping, man. We go back to the bathroom and allow Chloe to be shot, which is just devastating after the 5 episodes we had with Chloe.
Step-ass would say. Now, let's talk business.
I got nothing for you.
Wrong. You got hella cash.
You don't know who the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing? Come on, put that thing down!
Don't ever tell me what to do. I'm so sick of people trying to control me.
You are going to get in hella more trouble for this than drugs.
Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away from me, psycho!
This then leads to Nathan and Jefferson both being arrested, obviously as a result of the fact that Nathan just shot somebody in the middle of a school, so, you know, pretty obvious it happened. After this, we get a scene of Max by the lighthouse where the scenery is just beautiful, man. It's jaw-dropping. We get a view of the town as well by the lighthouse. We sacrificed our best friend for this town to remain standing. The thing that makes this ending really incredible though is the funeral scene. The use of Spanish Sahara here by Falls as the music for this is literally perfect. I love the song, and I love the scene even more somehow. It feels like being shot in the stomach at point blank range. You could probably find at least 10 hours of people playing this game and crying to this scene on YouTube alone. Just watch a compilation of it, man. The evidence is there to be seen. The thing I find the most heart-wrenching about this ending though is the fact that Chloe died thinking Max and Rachel both abandoned her due to the game's events not happening in this timeline. Obviously Max remembers the events, but Chloe doesn't. It didn't happen to her. She really is a tragic character in this game, and that may be the reason I love this ending the most. There isn't a happy ending here in either, but this is definitely the bigger downer of both the endings. The main takeaway from the Sacrifice Chloe ending is that both Max and Chloe's development throughout this game finally leads us to the realization of Max seeing that changing the past constantly does not help her, and the storm is the physical repercussion of this. In Chloe's case, she stops being self-centered by sacrificing herself for the safety of the entirety of Arcadia Bay. I could say more about this ending, but I just wanted to let it speak for itself, considering I'm sure there are many other videos on this website which break down this ending, and I just want to let my enjoyment speak for itself. Despite this jaw-dropping ending, which is pure cinema, I still find the last episode really underwhelming, but the endings are incredible. I can't say much more positively apart from that, though. I just feel like getting rid of Chloe for the vast majority of this episode was a really poor narrative choice. The nightmare sequence is easily the worst part of the game, and nothing comes close. And I find Jefferson more humorous and scary as a villain once we see more of his character in the darkroom. The ending again, though, is incredible, and I find the Chloe scenes extremely compelling. Despite that though, this episode, I can only put it into C tier for me, and I think it's the weakest of the game. I hate that, because the first 4 episodes set up for the perfect payoff, and I think Don't Nod kind of missed the mark on this one. This episode is not bad by any means, and I still think it's decent enough, and I enjoy playing through it. But when it's bad, it drags. It doesn't hold a candle to episode 3 or 4, and the only one I could see myself maybe ranking it over on another day is episode 1, but no, I still disagree. Episode 1 is a great set for the game, and it's not a bad episode again, but you can't compare it to the others. Now that all is said and done, I really believe the first game is incredible for the vast majority of its playtime. I just love the setting of it. It makes me feel so nostalgic despite Arcadia Bay not being a real place, which I don't understand how Don't Know managed to do it, but full props to them for creating an unforgettable environment that I'm sure millions of people absolutely love. My only minor issues with this game is that firstly, it doesn't quite stick the landing, and also the major issue I suppose is the normalisation of the Frank-Rachel relationship, which I just think is just disgusting. Despite these issues though, the game is absolutely brilliant though, 9 out of 10 times, and I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to play through it again. Max and Chloe are an incredible duo, and 2 characters have given me enough to say that they carry the entire game on its back despite me loving many other elements of this game. I think Max and Chloe are just that good though. I love both endings' symbolism for their new relationship. You can either have a vaguely hopeful ending where they will live a new life together, or you can have the soul-crushing full circle ending where Max's time travel powers do a complete loop on itself, and technically the game doesn't happen in this ending, which I love in some ironic kind of way. In the future you'll be able to see where I rank these episodes compared to every Life is Strange episode. I'll go into more in-depth thoughts comparing each game to each other one in that episode, whereas this is comparing the game to itself in a way. You may be able to tell, but it's going to be pretty hard for any other game to beat the majority of these episodes. The first game is incredible. And now I'd like to thank all of those who have tuned in up until this point for my first video. The script for this is pushing 11,000 words, which is quite crazy but thoroughly enjoyable. But I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe if you really enjoyed it. Again, if this video isn't the best quality, I apologise, but it is my first video. I'm sure in time with every video the qualities will improve, and hopefully you come back for more for the next Before the Storm video if you enjoyed. But once again, a heartfelt thank you for watching to this point, and I can't wait to see you for the ranking of Before the Storm.